3 days of rail strikes begin today with travel chaos right across the country.
Well, a very good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Thursday, the 18th of August. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Rosie Wright.
Thank you very much indeed for your company. We're with you until 9:30. Here's what's leading the news.
Over 45,000 rail workers begin striking today in a dispute over pensions and pay. The travel disruption will continue for 4 days, with the London Underground and some bus services also affected.
Students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will open their A-level results this morning. Grades expected to be lower than last year, which were teacher assessed. It's the first time since 2019 that the results will now be based on in-person exams.
And we've been following the dramatic cat and mouse battle between French police and people smugglers. Our Home Affairs editor, Mark White, will have the full story.
Listen, you know, we always like to hear from you. We always like to reflect that. We are GB News, the People's Channel, and we want your views. Your views makes our news. gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News. Okay, and off the rails is our top story this morning. If you are a commuter, no matter where you are in the country, you face a fresh wave of disruption today as 45,000 rail workers go on strike. It's a long-running dispute over pay and pensions.
Only 20% of services are going to be running, and more strikes will take place over the next 3 days. The London Underground and some bus services are striking too on Friday. Well, joining us now is Richard Town, transport expert and editor of the Greater London Transport newsletter. Thank you very much for joining us. This is an endless story, it feels, this summer. Yet again, we have 3 unions going on strike. Do you have any sympathy with them?
I have little sympathy for them, apart from the minimum wage workers. And the minimum wage workers, of course, should be taken out of the negotiations and given a proper pay packet for the work that they do. But apart from them, in this time of the economic cycle, when people getting back to work after COVID and after the other disruptions, no sympathy whatsoever.
That doesn't mean to say they haven't got a valid right to strike, and also that, you know, they have got needs like everybody else. They're facing 10% inflation.
Who said that any of us should have an inflation-linked pay rise? We don't negotiate that. I didn't when I was working full time, and neither should the rail unions. This is a politically motivated strike. The RMT, although not connected nowadays with the Labour Party, is trying to emulate Arthur Scargill and the 3-day week of the 70s, which is where I came in.
If you say it's politically motivated, politically this has been quite messy for the Labour Party to work out what their view actually is on whether they support these strikes.
We haven't heard from them, apart from their edict that members, serving members, particularly front bench members, should not appear on the picket line, which is something different to what I understood the Labour Party to stand for. Yet the leaders of the unions, they claim to be socialist. They claim to be socialist in their aims. They're not socialist. They are selfish.
That'll be one of them phoning you now to say, button it. Richard, you know, you are a transport expert. You are editor of the Greater London Transport newsletter. Just sum up for us what you think these strikes are not achieving. I mean, they will achieve, you know, obviously a certain amount of chaos in all of this. But do you think they will actually get anywhere?
I don't believe that they will get anywhere, and the next thing I want to see is a reference to what we used to call ACAS, the Conciliation and Arbitration Service, and that should have been done before any of this industrial action and the last industrial actions that took place. At the head of your item, you mentioned the disruption up to 20% of services only running throughout the UK.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that will spin off into tomorrow because the rolling stock will be A, in the wrong position,
Yeah.
and B, not prepared for service. So it'll spin off again. We've also got London Underground and London Overground Aviva services coming out on Friday as well. So there is going to be parts of London particularly and other parts of the UK which will
means
have no
disruption
services
is
at all.
going to be effective. Does that get us any closer to a solution?
No, I don't believe it does. Go for arbitration. That's what should be occurring. They are professional negotiators, both in the employers and the and the unions, and they should be doing.
What would you say to Mick Lynch, the man who's leading the unions, on this?
Go for arbitration now and stop the strikes.
It's the case for the unions. They're saying we're not going to beg for our salary, we're negotiating, and this is a strategy. They seem fairly ironclad that unless they get something that looks like the rate of inflation, which, while these strikes have been going on, has been going up and up, they're not going to budge. So do you really think they'll say, yes, we'll take a different course of action?
They should be also aware that they are attacking, in effect, their own members' jobs, because the rail companies will have no option but to reduce services in order to claw back some of the profits which are going to be lost by this action, and they are losing goodwill as well. There's a head swell of goodwill towards the unions and their claim, but their claim is not going to be advanced by putting other workers inconvenienced.
Now, OK, you are the editor of Greater London Transport Newsletter. What do you make of the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan's involvement in all of this, the role that he has to play and the role that he is playing?
Well, the role that he is playing seems to be a kind of a knee-jerk reaction. Yesterday, he said that the cost of living increases would cause an increase in crime. Well, I don't remember when I left the Navy many, many years ago resorting to crime in order to support myself, and many other people don't as well. So that was an insult. The mayor has a prerogative through Transport for London, which he chairs, in order to bring the warring parties again in conciliation across the negotiating table. But he hasn't done so, and he should do so. He should speak to both his transport unions and Transport for London, which he chairs, and get an agreement hammered out. He's quite capable of doing so. He's a former Minister of Transport himself.
Where then does this leave people who, will ride motorcycles, will be in cars and whatever, and who could short-circuit this strike? They'll be very much needed. Do you think that the Mayor for London is helping them in any way?
No, he's not. The government and my own newsletter have called for him to stop the ULEZ charges, stop parking charges.
For a day or for the duration of the strike?
For the duration of the strike. Stop the congestion charge. Again, these are twists against people who are turning around and saying, well, I'm not going to come in today, and because I won't be able to get my train tomorrow, I'm not going to come in tomorrow, and that will spin on into Monday. We need the productivity back in order to pay our COVID-related debts.
The thing is, we have become much more productive at working from home. These strikes don't have the same clout and damage that they would have done before the pandemic.
Certainly, there's been several studies. The last I read was that some 13% of workers are working from home and enjoying the benefits of that. There will be, I think, a shortening of the working week from 5 to 4 days eventually, and that will evolve.
Yeah, OK. As the strike will involve 3 days scheduled beginning today. Richard Town, he is a transport expert and the editor of Greater London Transport Newsletter. Thank you very much indeed for your say on all of this. And of course, you can have your say. GBviews at gbnews.uk. You can tweet at gbnews as well. Is this affecting you? Have you got round the idea of train strikes, or what is your idea for a solution? Please do let us know.
Right now, at 10 minutes past 6, students across the country will receive their A-level results today in about a couple of hours' time. The first grades, though, have already been released online. OK, just to make clear, this is the first year that these results are going to be based the way they used to be on in-person exams, opposed to teachers' assessments, and those results are therefore expected to be lower than they have been in the past 2 years because of the pandemic. Well, let's find out a bit more. Our East of England reporter Ed Crawford is outside the County Upper School in Bury St Edmunds. Very good morning to you, Ed. Just tell us what's expected today. Lots of nervous pupils, parents and teachers.
Well, you're certainly right. There's going to be a lot of nervous people waking up this morning. Students, teachers and parents. Now, this time of year is traditionally the time of year where there's a mad rush for university placements, and I'm sure it's going to be exactly the same this year. As you mentioned, there has been grade inflation over the last 2 years, with almost all subjects up to around 45% of grades being between A and A star. So the government have intervened to stop grade inflation, as it were, and we're going to see the results of that this year. UCAS have come out and reassured people that they believe the majority of people will receive the grades they want and get the placements they want. But it's going to be a turbulent year for students. The Education Secretary, James Cleverly, also said, despite the nerves that people will feel, I want to reassure anyone collecting their results that whatever your grades, there has never been a better range of opportunities available. And that's certainly true. In Britain, there's lots of opportunities available in terms of employment and further education. So today will be an interesting day for students across the country.
So big day, hope results go your way. Do you remember that day for yourself, Rosie?
I do. I mean, I just remember logging into sort of an online platform, looking at my results, thinking, oh, that's OK, and went back to sleep. So I never had the sort of being at school nervousness with the envelope and being with all your friends. You know, they're going, oh, I've done so badly. And it's because they got, you know, 10 A stars and 1 A rather than...
You were a smart aleck. You knew you were a smart aleck. You knew it was going to happen.
Well, I found exams really stressful, actually. Just all that pressure. I worked really, really hard in exams, unsurprisingly being, I think, not surprisingly, a bit of a goody two-shoes. But you feel like, well, I've really worked all year. Is it really fair for this sort of 2-hour paper to represent my entire ability? So I used to find it stressful. Yeah. I fear maybe you didn't find it as stressful as me.
No.
More relaxed.
Well, I do believe the harder you work, the luckier you get with things like that. But what other way is there to determine? I do think, you know, assessment is every lazy pupil's dream, isn't it? Because you think, good, it doesn't depend on the exam. I can suck up the teachers all year and put a good project in and whatever. But that's the way it is, just my view. So let's talk about the exams. And the Conservative leadership hopefuls took to the stage in Belfast yesterday, where the Northern Ireland Protocol dominated the conversation. Both candidates vowed to change that protocol, pledging their support to the government bill that tears up parts of the arrangement.
Well, for more on this, let's speak to political reporter at The Eye, Chloe Chaplin, who joins us in the studio. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Before we get on to the details, there's a little bit, yet another hustings. They're seeming lengthy and not providing that much new detail.
No, well, for those of us who have to watch every single one, they definitely feel like they're starting to drag out now. And obviously we're hearing the same message, slightly changed, slightly recalibrated for each audience. So we had one in Scotland earlier this week, which was all about independence. And obviously yesterday's was in Northern Ireland, it was all about the protocol. But, you know, the message that's still dominating is the argument over tax cuts in the economy. But, yeah, I have to say, they are starting to drag on a little bit.
So what was specific yesterday? What more did we learn?
The main focus specifically was on the Northern Ireland Protocol. I mean, both candidates had a very similar message on this, which was that for Stormont to resume power sharing, they want they are both arguing that the protocol bill has to go through. At the moment, it's facing opposition in the Lords, so it's probably going to be a bit of a lengthy process. I think Truss said that it could take around a year for this to happen.
Take about a year?
Yeah.
So in that time, then the prediction would be that there would be no government in Northern Ireland?
Yeah, and as you know, that's been the case since February this year. So not really good news for voters in Northern Ireland who are hoping to see power sharing resume sooner than that.
No, especially since a lot of people in Northern Ireland don't see anything wrong with the protocol.
Well, I mean, not forgetting that Liz Truss, as Foreign Secretary, introduced the protocol bill, which is going to be ripping up elements of the protocol agreed by the previous government. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be tricky. Sunak has said in the past that he would be open to reopening negotiations with the EU whilst the bill is going through Parliament. So at the moment, I think there's still quite a lot of grandstanding going on this issue.
Why hasn't it been better prioritised?
I mean, that's a very good question. I think with everything going on, the focus has been on more immediate concerns, and I think probably if you ask people in Northern Ireland, they would say that they feel like they are sometimes treated kind of second best. I'm sure probably similar things would apply to voters in Scotland and maybe Wales. But yeah, I mean, now thinking about the fact that it could take up to a year for this to be fixed, it's really, not good news.
Meanwhile, the news that everybody wants to talk about is the whole cost of living crisis. Are we getting any clearer policy from either the two of them on that?
Well, we had this IFS, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, did some analysis out today saying basically that there's not going to be any financial headroom for tax cuts that either of them are pushing for. Predominantly Liz Truss, as we know, her whole campaign is focused around this 30 billion package of tax cuts. So this is a bit of a blow for her campaign now, because the IFS is saying with rising inflation, yesterday we had the 10.1% figure out, there's basically not going to be any room in government finances to fund these tax cuts unless you're prepared to also drastically cut public spending, which I can't see happening at the moment.
Chloe, thanks very much indeed for your take on things. Chloe Chaplin is the political reporter with The Eye. Thank you very much for coming in. We're going to bring you up to date with the news situation, with the time just coming up to 17 minutes past 6.
The government's been accused of being asleep at the wheel over the energy crisis as an Ofgem director quits over the energy price cap. Christine Farnish told the Times newspaper she'd resigned because she couldn't support a decision to recover supply costs by raising customer prices.
Greater Manchester Police have issued 2 images of a man they urgently want to speak to following the abduction of a 7-year-old girl in Manchester. The force has also arrested a 35-year-old man on suspicion of abduction and sexual assault. Detectives say the child was taken into a wooded area in Droylsden. She was reunited with her family a short time later.
The search continues for a knife-wielding suspect seen fleeing the scene of that fatal attack on an 87-year-old man in West London. Thomas O'Halloran was stabbed to death whilst riding his mobility scooter in Greenford. Police described the attack as shocking and unprovoked.
The more you hear about the murder of that man, Thomas O'Halloran, in his mobility scooter, the more you scratch your head as to why. And apparently everybody in the area knew him. He was an entertainer outside Tesco's, and we just saw some footage of him there playing his accordion or mandolin or whatever it was, and he would sing and play music to people. There he is doing what he did, and just why his life had to come to such a horrible end. Absolutely terrible. That's the man police want to interview and who they want to connect to this. So if you know who that is, get in touch with the police. We'll take a break there.
Yeah, after it, we're going to be speaking and hearing from our Home Affairs editor, Mark White, who's been reporting on the battle between French police and people smugglers. It's an exclusive report. Don't miss that after the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Following the intense thunderstorms that some southern counties saw yesterday, today it's fine in the south, but it is already turning cloudier further north and west, with some outbreaks of rain moving in, this time coming from the Atlantic. The rain not quite as impactful as the intense thunderstorms that have been very hit and miss over the last few days, but nevertheless it's a damp start to the day for western and central Scotland and Northern Ireland. The rain then by late morning pushing into parts of Cumbria, North and West Wales, eventually turning up into the tip of Cornwall. And those outbreaks of rain will be on and off. They'll be light to moderate, but some heavier stuff coming along for North Wales and North West England later. It's replaced by showers for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Cool here with a breeze, 18 to 20 Celsius, but 27 Celsius in the southeast, where it's going to stay mostly sunny after any early residual cloud and showers get out of the way. Then this area of cloud and rain, well, it moves into central areas, the Midlands, southwest England, South Wales through the evening, and then it pushes during the early hours of tomorrow into East Anglia and the southeast. By this time, it's turned to showers, some moderate to heavy bursts, but not as lively as recent thunderstorms. 19 Celsius in the southeast, though, a warm night to come, but much fresher conditions further northwest, where it'll be closer to the low to mid-teens, and actually plenty of showers first thing for central and western Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland, Northern England, 1 or 2 turning up for North Wales. But once any early showers move out of the way from the southeast, here it's largely sunny skies, likewise across much of the rest of the south of the UK. But temperatures back to average, we're looking at low 20s generally, and in the north, high teens. Saturday starts off dry, especially in the south, some sunshine here. I think in the north it'll be a blustery day with showers spreading south. And Sunday brings with it more general rain, especially in western areas.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
In 20 minutes' time, at 6:45, we're going to be talking about sewage. More than 50 seaside towns and coastlines are deemed dangerously polluted. We're going to be finding out what can be done, how has this happened, why is it allowed to happen, and your reaction to it.
And where you can swim if you want to safely. Also this morning, we're asking, should cyclists require number plates? We'll have that debate at 8:20.
And you can join in any of the discussions, give your opinions, you know what to do. There's the email, and there is the Twitter address. There it is. That's all you need to know. Right, we've got a very good, interesting and sharp report on the migrant situation across the Channel as the number of people arriving in the UK tops 20,000. GB News has witnessed a cat-and-mouse tactic between French police and migrants as authorities face an almost impossible task of mounting patrols over many, many miles of French coastline.
Now, our Home and Security editor, Mark White, has this exclusive report.
Pushing off from the northwest coast of France, the latest group of Channel migrants attempting to cross into UK waters. Our drone footage perfectly illustrates how every inch of space on this small boat is taken up with its human cargo. We counted 50 people clambering on board this inflatable. some struggling to get to the boat as it picks up speed.
Look, he's running back.
We're at Gravelines between Calais and Dunkirk, one of the people smugglers' favoured locations for attempting the crossing. Over days of filming, we witnessed the cat and mouse tactics of the police and migrants. From what we saw, French authorities are trying to stop the crossings, using beach buggies to try to intercept groups as they emerge from the dunes, firing tear gas to disperse the migrants. But in truth, despite some successes, there are far too many miles of coastline here for police to mount a fully effective presence. And although these groups are often chased back into the dunes, the people smugglers simply marshal them again, and when the police move down the beach to chase their next group, they make a dash for the sea. The local lifeguards have become used to multiple daily small boat launches. They're not officially allowed to intervene, but have helped when the boats get into difficulties.
It's sad, you know. We see children, we see the man with his wife, and it's dangerous. So.
The evidence of these migrants is everywhere around here. Discarded clothing littering the shoreline and the dunes along this tourist beach. The local tour guide says it's not just a UK and French issue, that the European Union has to do more.
I went to swimming and I saw a boat, a long boat with I don't know how many people in there, and we were a little bit shocked. I was scared for them because they were too much on the boat.
As concerning as the small boat crisis undoubtedly is for those in the UK, particularly in Kent, for people living here along the northwest coast of France, the impact is huge. In this supermarket car park in Dunkirk, we found this group of Eritreans just sitting around drinking Jack Daniels and smoking cannabis in broad daylight, waiting here until their next attempt to get to the UK.
Do you know anyone in the UK?
In UK? In UK? In UK? I have UK for me. I have UK.
You know people?
I have UK for me.
The people smuggling industry is big business for the criminal gangs, who can net millions of pounds a day. They've become expert at reading the prevailing tide and weather conditions. These life jackets are hardly even hidden among the dunes, waiting for the next group to grab them as they attempt to cross. And we discovered personal papers and other documents discarded by the migrants on the instructions of the people smugglers to make identifying them more difficult for UK authorities. Among the papers, application forms for asylum in countries including Belgium. Further down the beach, more evidence of the French police tactic of slashing and puncturing these inflatables if they can get to them in time. But although some of those initial attempts are frustrated, the vast majority of small boats and their human cargo make it across the English Channel. More than 20,500 so far this year, to add to the tens of thousands who've already entered the UK asylum system. Mark White, GB News.
After the break, we'll be going through the papers. David Wooding and Nikki Hodson with those after this.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
With the time just after 6:30, let's bring you up to date with what's happening news-wise in this Thursday morning.
A nervous morning for many people. A-level students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland who sat exams for the first time since the pandemic began will get their results today. Grades are expected to be lower than last year and roughly halfway between those awarded last year and in 2019.
Rail, tube and bus passengers face further travel disruption amid 3 days of industrial action starting today. Rail services will be affected today and Saturday, with tubes and buses disrupted tomorrow. This morning, with more than 45,000 workers walking out in a long-running dispute over paying conditions, 80% of services will be affected.
Royal Mail workers have voted to strike in a dispute over terms and conditions. The Communication Workers Union said its members' decision was overwhelming. It follows a separate planned strike day over pay, with 4 days of walkout scheduled for later this month and in September.
Let's get into the papers and what they're making of the big stories. Political journalist David Wooding and author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson doing those. Very good to see you both. And David, we're starting with you. We're talking inflation, front page of the Telegraph.
Yes, grim news, inflation. We all know it's going up, but it's now 10.7%. And so it's 10.1%. It's past that. It's a bit of a watershed, this, Eamonn, because like in the 1980s when we reached 3 million unemployed, it's one of those dark moments where you think this is really a serious problem. And what's alarming about this mostly is that the Bank of England forecasts, which is briefed to keep inflation down to 2%, have all been way wide of the mark. And the Bank of England is now predicting a 13.3% peak. So you have to think deep down, is that an underestimate? Is it going to hit 15 or 16%?
And why is it different in the UK than it is? Just look at this, we're 10.1%. Next in Europe comes Germany, 8.5%, Italy about the same, France 6.8%, I'm going to say only. So why are we so out of kilter? What I'm really getting at is the Bank of England have a lot to answer for in this, don't they?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, there are added problems with the workforce. There's a shortage of workers. The other thing is we rely more heavily on gas than some of those other countries, which pushes it up the overall figure too. And we've got a lot of the problems America has, but the problems Europe have got. So it's like all worst case scenarios for us.
Particularly what's concerning is it's the price of food that's really helped drive the increase.
Yes.
And it's things like the absolute basics, milk, pasta. This is a situation that's looming and it's going to only get worse, and we don't know for how much longer.
Yeah, absolutely right, Rosie. You put your finger on the button there. 80% food prices have gone up. You mentioned pasta. A packet of penny pasta is 50p has gone up to about 80p. Now, you're talking a 30p rise there, but when you add that sort of rise to other products, it shows how everything is rocketing. And food, some people, they talk about we have the choice of heating or eating. Some people may have a problem with doing either.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people see restaurants eating out, entertaining as a fixed price type thing until they actually will do it this weekend, and they'll suddenly look at their bills and say, oh, this is a lot more than I used to pay. So, Nikki, we continue on this theme. The Guardian front page, which you have chosen, cost of living crisis to trap 45 million people in fuel poverty.
Yeah, I mean, these are really shocking statistics. And this has come off the back of a study from the University of York that's looking at just how far it's reaching. It's saying that 18 million families, which is the equivalent of 45 million people, will be left struggling to make ends meet because of the predicted rises in the energy price cap in October and then again in January. And that includes more than 86% of pensioner couples who are going to fall into fuel poverty, 90.4% of lone parents who've got one or two children. And then, it's just, there's also a north-south divide apparently as well. So in the south, people will be struggling slightly less than if they're in the Midlands, further north, and then in Ireland. So, that was something that we saw during the pandemic, this north-south divide, the north really struggling financially, and that's going to be exacerbated by that. But yeah, it's just, it feels like, with the Tory party, there's just been too little too late in terms of dealing with the situation. And even the idea that, there's going to be a £400 allowance given to help kind of offset the prices of the energy bills, that just isn't going to be enough, people.
No, and people are just crying out, get on with it. Whatever you're going to do, get on with it. Stop this nonsense around the country as to who's going to be the next leader of the Conservative Party, which seems to be a sort of done deal, David, does it not? I mean, am I right or wrong here? The postal votes and whatever, when you take them into account, it's Liz Truss's, isn't it?
Well, about a third of postal votes went in on day one. The minute they landed on the doormat, they'd made their minds up. And if the internal polling of the Conservative Party is right, then Liz Truss is home and dry. I was with Rishi Sunak on Saturday doing an interview, and he is desperately trying to rake up as many votes as he can among those who haven't voted, but there are an increasingly small number of people to appeal to. On the other hand, Liz Truss is now appealing to MPs because she has less support among MPs than she does out in the grassroots. So she's trying to get them on board. We've seen one or two defections from Rishi's camp, which is a sign that perhaps she's almost over the line.
Why did the campaign have to be this long? Do you think in hindsight, a fortnight, 3 weeks maybe would have been sufficient?
It's a difficult one, this, Rosie, because the Conservatives who wanted Boris Johnson to stay were arguing against his critics, and mostly in the Labour Party, that do we want a beauty contest now when Britain is facing such a war in Europe and also high inflation and interest rates? The last thing that people would think we were just navel gazing at a time when we're in trouble, and of course that's what's now happening. And after the last two elections, when Boris Johnson was effectively anointed, as was Theresa May, because the rival candidate Andrew Leadsom fell out at the last minute with a big gaffe she made. They felt that they really did have to give the membership a choice this time. Of course, normally when you choose a party leader, it's in opposition. They've lost an election, as in fact the way Jeremy Corbyn and Tony Blair and now Keir Starmer were chosen. But it's different when you're in government.
Nikki, we were talking there about the problem, this cost of living crisis, and you highlighted it quite severely there, and it is stark. It's absolutely stark. That's the problem. What is the solution? That's what I'm trying to say. What do you think people are crying out for? What do you think needs to be done, whether it's economically sound or not? What is the right thing to be doing now?
Well, it's got to be a combination of things, hasn't it? It's got to be tackling inflation, lowering taxes and giving more substantial handouts, possibly through the benefit system, which I know Ian Duncan-Smith has actually suggested to the Tories. And obviously he's got a lot of experience of dealing with welfare, so they should be listening to him. But it's the fact that they just kind of hold off till they get this notification that something's coming down the line, and then they think, we'll just give the absolute minimum that we can to support people. It's got to be treated holistically and seen as a kind of, it's going to be joined up thinking, which there just doesn't seem to be any of at the minute.
Yeah, a horror story, front page of the Daily Mail, which happened a couple of days ago. Police hunt the knife killer of Thomas O'Halloran. This highly entertaining man, 87 years of age, he sat outside Tesco's. He wasn't a busker, he wasn't collecting money. He just basically said, I'm here to entertain. The Mail's screaming out here, David, what kind of monster kills an 87-year-old on a mobility scooter?
I think that headline is brilliant. It absolutely says what I thought myself when I heard about this murder. What kind of monster does kill an 87-year-old on a scooter? There he was, sitting there doing a good deed, popular among the local community. Absolutely no motive for any of this, and none that we know of. There's no excuse for it. It's actually one of the most despicable killings I've seen recently. But it's also the 6th in 4 days in London, and there's been 59 murders this year. So there's going to be a lot of focus on the new Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, and of course Sadiq Khan, the London Mayor, is already getting a bit of political stick over this, saying that what has he done to solve violent crime in London? I mean, there's the main thrust of criticism is that police have spent so much time looking at the internet for people writing nasty tweets or hate crime and that sort of thing, instead of focusing on burglary, robbery, violent assaults and the things that people really want them to look at. And that's the big challenge.
Thankfully, hopefully a lot of people will be looking at the CCTV footage that was released as well, because a manhunt has been launched. Of course, there is a suspected killer captured on CCTV running away, blood-stained gloves and armed with a knife as well. Apparently that CCTV also shows Mr. O'Halloran begging for help from passers-by after he was stabbed, and he was described as the most cheerful, jolly person I've ever known by one neighbour there.
And we've just had a significant development, actually. A 44-year-old man has just been arrested on suspicion of murder in that specific case. So that may be in part due to credit of lots of people who responded to the police request saying, please provide us with your CCTV. But as we get more details on that story, of course, we'll bring them to you here.
Nikki, we go front page of the Times. I mean, as we were highlighting, today is results day everywhere, I think, except Scotland. Generation COVID faces university rejection. Tough A-level grades mean 40,000 could lose out. Well, yes, no. They're not tough A-level grades. The real A-level grades in the last 2 years may not have been real. I mean, you can look at it in various ways.
Well, that's the idea. In the past 2 years, because of the unprecedented situation with exams, the grades were arguably inflated. And so I think there was, in 2020, 45% of A-levels were for the top 2 grades, A and A star. So, that just kind of sounds, well, unsustainable, certainly. But the point...
It was a bit inevitable this was going to happen, though, wasn't it? Because the poor teachers who had to do predictions, they're looking at their class and saying, oh, well, I can see amongst this class maybe 30% of them would get an A if they all had a really good day on the exam.
Absolutely.
Of course, not all of them actually do that. So, of course, grades were going to be higher.
Absolutely. And so this is the idea as well, is that traditionally with teachers, with the university, you offer high and accept low. So if somebody is predicted 3 A's and then gets 2 A's and a B, you take them anyway. But that isn't going to happen this year because there is already a kind of an oversubscription for university places. There are fewer places in clearing for the top universities. So unfortunately, some people will miss out on their first choice university today.
What we're going to talk about later on the programme is, does it matter if you miss out on university? In this day and age, what does university do for you except land you with a massive debt? So we're going to be talking to a guy very shortly. He's going to say, I didn't go to university and I turned my life, he made a huge success of himself in life. Sometimes you can look at those things and you can say, well, these are the exception rather than the rule on this. But, I, for one, think there should be an awful lot more credibility and attention given to apprenticeships, David. I mean, I do look at our profession, I mean, to be an esteemed scribe like yourself, with politics being your expertise, I'm not saying that doesn't require a degree, but there's so many aspects of what we do which requires an apprenticeship rather than a degree, I would have thought.
Yeah, well, before my time, they had grammar schools and technical high schools and secondary moderns. I'm not saying we should go back to that, but certainly at university, Tony Blair wanted to get 50% of all young people into university. Well, I questioned that at the time because some people have not got an academic
bent.
No,
and they shouldn't be made to feel bad about it.
I mean,
the same way, my friend, is I do not have any sort of practical leaning. I am the most useless individual. You know, if you said to me, wallpaper that wall or paint those stairs or put down that carpet or whatever, I would be absolutely useless, and I feel very embarrassed about that. So a lot of this is horses for courses. I never look at someone who is an electrician or a motor mechanic and think they're some way inferior to me. I am quite the reverse. I look in awe and think, how have they worked that out? How do they do that? And I do think there's so many jobs that we should be praising, we should be saying fantastic things about, rather than saying, oh, they are just a whatever. I don't agree with this whole Blair thing. I don't know where he's coming at from this, but, you know, every time I go to the dentist or whatever, the dentist say, we can't get dental nurses, hairdressers are saying we can't get apprentices to work in the
NHS, there's something like crazy amount of positions open in the NHS at all levels right now.
Nobody's working in the hotel industry, in the catering industry.
Nobody is. Hospitality.
Hospitality in general. And it's a state of crisis. It is absolutely... I just sometimes wonder what has happened to the world and where have our priorities been skewed?
Well, that's true. If you've got a bit of go about you and you go into one of these other industries, like you say, hospitality, you could rocket right to the top if you really went for it and you were trained properly in how to do it. There's loads of great opportunities out there. It's just a case of finding the one that suits you and where you what you... Not your capabilities, but...
Well, we've had a message in from John who said, I left the school at school age 15. I'm dyslexic, never took any exams at all. I think if you work hard, you will get rewarded. Now I'm a proud homeowner. Don't worry, kids, if you're up early, anxiously waiting. As long as you show your employer you're willing to work hard and put the hours in, you can work your way to the top. John, thank you for your experience. Should we look at interest rates? Back to financial...
No, let's not look at...
OK.
Let's not do that. Our next story is about sewage, and I just want to connect it, Nick. I just want to find in briefly, because we've got a guest waiting to talk about this. Let's talk about the extreme weather, the heaviest rainfall for months. Yesterday, I actually thought it was joyous. The rain came down heavily. I thought it was beautiful. And I would have loved to have gone out and stood in it. It was just fantastic. What I don't understand is why London and a lot of other places just can't deal with excess downpours. I just don't understand. I understand that the ground is hard and parched, but London's always flooded, and that's because we're building over soil, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And things like Victoria Station was flooded yesterday. Well, that's a major train station. You think that there'd be avenues to kind of get rid of the water. I mean, I think one of the points that this story makes is that when there's rainfall, it leads to sewage overflowing because rainfall and sewage are kept in the same places. And then sewage is released into the oceans and the rivers. And then we've got loads of beaches now that you're not meant to go on, not meant to swim in because of the state of the sewage.
Yeah, in other words, inept, incompetent.
Our whole system does not work. Yes.
Water utility companies, once again, who don't dig holes in the ground, who don't create reservoirs, who then tell us that you can't use a hose. Can you actually think, would you actually love to say how many people in the land watering their dandelions or whatever they grow actually contribute to drought? You know, it is absolute nonsense to try and put it on people and say, you, Mrs. Miggins, out there watering your flower box, you are responsible for the drought.
And there's meant to be a hosepipe ban coming in next week, despite this deluge that we've had. It just doesn't make any sense.
It's a lot of nonsense. If they dig holes in the ground and make reservoirs, which they have not done, not a single reservoir in the whole of the United Kingdom in 31 years.
There you go.
There you go. That says it all as far as I'm concerned. Now, guys, we'll say goodbye to you. We'll say hello to you again in about 40 minutes' time. Look forward to that. But right now, we are going to talk about sewage. So more than 50 seasides are deemed dangerously polluted as millions of people are during the holidays heading to coastlines. What are they going to get when they find there? Let's go to Hugo Taglum. Hugo is CEO Surfers Against Sewage. Hugo, how bad is it? How bad has it got over the past few days?
Good morning. Yeah, well, the last few days we've seen the damage. We've seen water companies being unable to cope with the hot weather, too little water, and then we've seen them being unable to cope with the rain that's come in. They seem only to be geared up for dealing with mild, overcast, drizzly weather. So we've seen dozens of sewage alerts at beaches around the country, along the south coast, down into Cornwall and Devon, up into Wales. Beaches that people are holidaying at, people are surfing at, people are swimming at, beaches where there shouldn't be sewage pollution. So water companies are continuing to dump into our rivers and into our ocean. This just builds on the 2.6 million hours of sewage pollution they put into our rivers and coastline last year. That was over 370,000 separate sewage pollution events last year. So the last 48 hours has been more of the same.
Hugo, here is the thing. They get away with it. Whatever penalties seem to come their way are obviously not sufficient enough. It's still profitable for them to do this. And let's just spell this out. You pee or poo in the loo, and they are using our rivers and beaches as open sewers.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Studies have shown that over the past decade or so, they've reduced investment in sewerage infrastructure by about 20%. They're not future-proofing their system, and they should do much better. The combined sewer overflows that they say are protecting our houses and businesses are actually protecting their shareholder profits. And they need to do much better. These are privatised monopolies actually ruining our rivers and ruining our beaches. Just 14% of our rivers meet good ecological status. And sadly, despite the improvements in our bathing water quality, we still languish at the bottom of the European tables for bathing water quality. Some 30% of our beaches need big improvements.
My friend, you have Surfers Against Sewage. You're there at the sharp end. You're there experiencing it. You know, what would I ever see? You know, if I took a stroll along a beach or a coastal line, yes, I may come across things there. Again, I was in Belfast 2 weeks ago, and there's a stretch of coastline around Belfast, and you're given a bag and a little claw thing to lift plastic up from the beach. Again, I go, that's never going to solve the problem of the cruise liners coming in and out of Belfast and what they dump and what just all that goes on from these water utility companies and things. But again, we are deemed to be the problem, and we can sort of fix the problem. I mean, we're being affected by the problem, but you have a philosophy, and I want you, Hugo, to talk us through this, because you guys have a motto, you have a strapline: thriving ocean, thriving people, and it's about a connect. Tell us about the connect that you think has been broken.
Well, look, we're all about people enjoying the coastline, having a good experience there. We believe a healthy ocean will lead to healthy communities, will lead to healthy coastal businesses. So if we have a thriving ocean, we will have thriving people. And as you say, Eamonn, this isn't about individual responsibility. This is about changing the systems around us, pushing those big businesses that are making huge profits to change the systems to allow us to have a cleaner, greener, more sustainable world. And that applies most of all to the ocean. And we're in the ocean decade, and the ocean is so important to all of us, whether we live in London, Belfast, Manchester, wherever around the world. We all need a healthy ocean. We all depend on a healthy ocean. And dumping sewage and plastic into our oceans is something we should not be doing. And it's up to big business to come up with the solutions to protect our ocean forever.
Just in the short term, Hugo, lots of families will be keen to go to the beach over the weekend. You know, it's the last few weeks of the school summer holiday. This immediate set of emergency warnings, how long does it take for the water to be OK and not be dangerous for us to swim in?
Well, look, advice says that between 24 and 48 hours, the sewage pollution should disperse. We, of course, have our own system, the Safer Seas and River Service. It's an app that anyone can download for free. They can get real-time alerts for any beach they want, hundreds of beaches around the country, to protect themselves from sewage pollution, so they know as and when those releases happen. And they can avoid the polluted beaches and go to a much cleaner beach where there is no pollution. So we'd always advise people to get the most up-to-date information through the Safer Seas and River Service. We'd advise them to avoid those polluted beaches and have a really great time at one of the cleaner beaches nearby.
Hugo, let's talk about plastic pollution. Absolutely awful, absolutely incredible, and it intrudes in every aspect of our lives. Apparently, it's even in the rainfall that came down yesterday. I always say this, and I'm very critical of government on this. Again, they try and make it our responsibility. Don't buy single-use plastic, they say. Well, I find that very difficult when I'm going to buy my toothpaste or my hair shampoo or whatever the heck it happens to be. It's very, very difficult. My answer to that is don't be making it. Don't make it in the first place. Governments attack petrol, they attack coal, there's various things, cigarettes, whatever. If you don't want these things out there, government, why aren't you saying to industry, we're going to give you 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, but after that, there ain't no plastic anymore. You've got to find a solution. What I'm saying to you is I do not feel that despite all the huff and puff, there is the political will to get rid of single-use plastic.
Well, look, I couldn't agree more, Eamonn. And I think we've heard, through this sort of discussion that often government and industry wants to lay the blame at the individual at our own doors. So whether it's a hosepipe ban, not flushing the wrong things down the toilet, avoiding single-use plastics, but actually we need full systems change. And we're seeing a lot of dither from government at the moment on these issues. So we were meant to see a sewage action plan, a storm overflow action plan being published in September to deal with sewage pollution. That's now been delayed. It's on hold. We were meant to see a deposit return scheme on plastic bottles and drinks containers coming in. That was committed to in 2019. Still not here yet. That would stop millions, if not billions, of plastic bottles from ending up in our ocean. So we need to see more urgent action faster to stop plastic at source, to stop sewage pollution getting into our rivers and coastline, and to make sure that industry is fully accountable for the pollution that they create.
You are an interesting guy. We could talk to you forever, but we've got a break to go to. Hugo Tagholm is the CEO of Surfers Against Sewage, and he wants to reform the connection. He thinks people are disconnected, not just from the ocean, but from the environment in general. Hugo, good luck with your work. Happy and safe surfing for you and everyone who's taking part in it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, after the break, if you were planning on travelling to the seaside, we've got more for you on the disruption. 45,000 rail workers go on strike. That after your weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Following the intense thunderstorms that some southern counties saw yesterday, today it's fine in the south, but it is already turning cloudier further north and west, with some outbreaks of rain moving in, this time coming from the Atlantic. The rain not quite as impactful as the intense thunderstorms that have been very hit and miss over the last few days, but nevertheless it's a damp start to the day for western and central Scotland and Northern Ireland. The rain then by late morning pushing into parts of Cumbria, North and West Wales, eventually turning up into the tip of Cornwall. And those outbreaks of rain will be on and off. They'll be light to moderate, but some heavier stuff coming on for North Wales and North West England later. It's replaced by showers for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Cool here with a breeze, 18 to 20 Celsius, but 27 Celsius in the southeast, where it's going to stay mostly sunny after any early residual cloud and showers get out of the way. Then this area of cloud and rain, well, it moves into central areas, the Midlands, southwest England, South Wales through the evening, and then it pushes during the early hours of tomorrow into East Anglia and the southeast. By this time it's turned to showers, some moderate to heavy bursts, but not as lively as recent thunderstorms. 19 Celsius in the southeast, though, a warm night to come, but much fresher conditions further northwest, where it'll be closer to the low to mid-teens, and actually plenty of showers first thing for central and western Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland, Northern England, 1 or 2 turning up for North Wales. But once any early showers move out of the way from the southeast, here it's largely sunny skies, likewise across much of the rest of the south of the UK. But temperatures back to average, we're looking at low 20s generally, and in the north, high teens. Saturday starts off dry, especially in the south, some sunshine here. I think in the north it'll be a blustery day with showers spreading south. And Sunday brings with it more general rain, especially in western areas.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Three days of transport strikes begin today with travel chaos around the country.
Hello there, very good morning to you. It's just after 7 o'clock. It's a Thursday morning, the 18th of August. You're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Rosie Wright. Thank you for your company.
Well, here's what's leading the news this morning. Over 45,000 rail workers begin striking today. It's in a dispute over pay and pensions. The travel disruption is going to continue for 3 days, and tomorrow the London Underground and some bus services will also be affected too.
Students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will open their A-level results this morning with grades expected to be lower than last year, because this is the first time since 2019 that the results will be based on in-person exams.
And GB News has been following the dramatic cat-and-mouse battle between French police and people smugglers. Our Home Affairs editor Mark White will have the full story.
And you've been very good with your story, your interpretations of the story. Rosie, just anything you've got there. You email us and you tweet us as well, and this is what you've been saying.
Whether you support the strikes, basically, Michael says, to me it's called insurrection and overthrow. As the unions disrupt the country, people are trying to meet rises in energy and food costs. Stuart says, good morning to you. The whole country's in a mess. The government are on holiday. The taxpayers are paying for it in more ways than many. Get someone behind the black door and get it sorted. Well, do you support the strike action? Please do get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email, or tweet us at gbnews.
And that is our top story this morning. Britain continues to be off the rails. Commuters right across the whole country face new disruption today, with 45,000 rail workers going on strike in this dispute, which is now long running. It's over pay, it's over pensions. Only 20% of services will be running today. Let's now speak to Steve Headley. He's a former RMT Assistant General Secretary who joins us in the studio, and we have spoken to you before, Steve, obviously about the situation. Could I ask you, so here we will go into another 3 days of disruption. Are we any further down the track, down the line of resolution?
Unfortunately, that's not the case. I think the governments are intervening. They're not really letting the train operating companies and Network Rail reach a solution. And, we have this sort of vicious circle where the companies are blaming the government and the government are blaming the companies. And really, I think we're held hostage to this election in the Conservative Party for the new leader and the new Prime Minister. Yeah. I think they're trying to give red meat and sound bites to their constituency. None of them want to be seen to be doing a reasonable thing, which would be to settle this pay dispute.
You see, and it's not just a pay dispute, it's a job dispute.
Jobs as well.
Yeah. And, that comment that Rosie read out there, and the person said, how can there be public support for a union that wants a pay increase from the past? the thing is, I just wonder, I just ask people, if this was you and this was your job, would you be like a turkey voting for Christmas? Would you be saying, oh, well, I'm going to agree to whatever conditions exist, but I'm doing myself out of a job in the long run? Because this is what the government seem to be suggesting. They're saying, oh, yeah, look, we're happy. We're happy to do business eventually through the train companies. But you're going to have to pay for it. You're going to have to give up a lot of jobs for this one.
Well, I mean, people have lost a fifth of their spending power through a 2-year pay freeze, and now we've got inflation running at over 10%. I think it's the highest in 40 years. And on top of that, we have thousands of prospective job cuts. And what that'll mean as well is that the people that are left behind, the work-life balance will be absolutely destroyed. They'll have to work. The proposals are 39 weeks of nights, 39 weekends. So if you think that, I think that's completely unreasonable. And people have had enough of it. And I think really the whole country have had enough of it. We are in a situation where on the one hand you're being offered, sort of Thatcherite tax cuts that aren't going to help anybody except the already rich. And we have people unable to pay their bills. So what do people do? I mean, I think we need a generalised strike wave. And we need a complete redistribution of wealth in this country. We can't have it anymore.
What do you mean by a generalised strike? You mean a joined up different trades and different unions getting together for a general strike over the whole country?
Yeah, and it's got to have a political element. I think the time is right now for a political strike to demand the nationalisation of the utilities, not just the energy companies, which are making massive extortionate profits, but also the utilities like water. We see a drought, and we see people getting paid millions of pounds in bonuses.
I'm hearing what you say, Steve. What would you say to all the people who have now jumped under their breakfast tables today, shivering and cowering and calling you a Trotskyite and whatever about all of this there is? There will be a huge element of people who will say, no. This is not what we want. What would you say to those people?
Well, look, the world's heading for an environmental crisis. We're heading in Britain for old people starving to death or freezing to death in the winter. And the reality is you either have socialism or barbarism, that was said, but now I think it's socialism or extinction. So people better get their head around that we need a massive redistribution of wealth, not just in this country, but worldwide.
That view is going to make many people watching or listening really angry. They're going to say, we're suffering from this as well. And as our previous guest said in the last hour, having a pay rise in line with inflation isn't in my contract. Why should it be in yours? Why should one sector get this attention when everybody else is stuck?
Sorry, it's not in anybody's contract. Basically, it's bargaining. It's collective bargaining. And of course, what I'm saying is it shouldn't just be us. Well, that's why I'm saying we should have a general strike. Everybody should have a pay rise. We need renationalisation of all the utilities. We can't have this rubbish where people are said, oh, we'll just give you 400 quid, which we'll take back off you. That's going to solve nothing.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no solution.
It's interesting. If you had have said what you've just said 6 months ago, I think there would have been more opposition to it. Now, people are finding out about the water companies, the utility companies, and the mess that they preside over. The energy companies as well, which everybody is talking about. And maybe, and I just put this question out here to you viewers and listeners, does Steve Headley and what he's talking about, is it another way? Is it a way that you hadn't have thought about before, but you think maybe this man has a point? Now, I also want you to humanise this, Steve. I want you to tell us, I mean, when we talk about, there's going to be rail strikes, train strike, people automatically think train drivers. Tell me who is involved in that. Who are the people who feel strongly enough to do about this? What do they work at?
Well, we do have a small proportion of train drivers in our union. Most of them are in ASLEF. And by the way, they need a pay rise as well. But we represent everybody from the person that makes the sandwiches to the person that cleans the platforms to the signallers. And a lot of our people are on, minimum wage or living wage.
Yes.
And these people are working 60, 72 hours a week and still having to claim benefits and still having to go to food banks.
So they are the working poor.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. The other thing that gets me, I suppose, is a lot of people think, we love the trains. The trains are great about this country. It's lovely a day out in the train. But no one thinks, you actually say, well, would you work? Would you do those jobs? Would you clean the platforms? Would you clean the trains? Would you, whatever else you've got to do? And there's a myriad of jobs. I don't really know all that's involved with them. But let me ask you this. You said to me you don't think you're any further down the line. How long will this go on for? I mean, there has to be a settlement, there has to be a negotiation. What is your prediction looking into your crystal ball?
Well, look, I really hope that the leaderships of all the union up the ante. I think we need a general strike. I think the unions need to get together to bring this thing to a head, and that's the only way it's going to be solved.
Now, listen, folks, at home, and I want to know from you, we want to reflect this. General strike. This man is calling for a general strike, and you know why? He doesn't trust the utility companies. He doesn't trust the way the government's running the NHS, for instance, whatever. Is it time for trades and unions to get together and say, enough is enough. Inflation is at 10.1% and it's not keeping pace with our standard of living. We can't basically afford to live. Or is he talking nonsense? Just let us know this morning. Steve Headley, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Indeed, not at all, Steve. Thank you. Always nice to hear, always good to hear what it's about and why people are going through what they're going through. People who are striking and people who are on the receiving end and their lives are being disrupted. Join the discussion. It says there on screen, GBViews at gbnews.uk, and you can tweet us at gbnews as well.
Well, good morning to Flick, who has got in touch on the email. Someone receiving A-level results today. Well, Flick is one of many who'll get their test results. Some will already have them. The majority come out at 8 o'clock. It's the first year that results will be based on what you wrote in those exam halls as opposed to teachers' assessments. And those results, therefore, are expected to be lower than the past 2 years.
Our East of England reporter, Ed Crawford. Ed is outside County Upper School in Bury St Edmunds. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning. I'm in a beautiful part of Suffolk, Bury St Edmunds, and I'm eagerly awaiting the results of A-level results, along with thousands of students across the country. Now, there's going to be a lot of nervous people waking up today because, as you mentioned, the grades are now going to be assessed in-person exams. Last 2 years, they've gone through teacher assessment, and there has been grade inflation. Indeed, 45% of all grades the last 2 years have been between A and A star. And this has prompted the government to intervene to stop the grade inflation. We don't know if that's going to have a big detrimental effect this year, but we don't think so. The UCAS have come out and said that they're optimistic the students are going to get the grades they would like, and a lot of people will get the placements they like. But of course, this doesn't calm the nerves of thousands of students who will be waking up today anxious to get their results. This time of year traditionally is the rush for university placements, and I'm sure it's going to be exactly the same this year. One interesting thing, Education Secretary James Cleverly said, despite nerves that people will feel, I want to reassure anyone collecting their results that whatever your grades, there has never been a better range of opportunities available. And indeed that is true. In the United Kingdom, we're blessed that we've got a lot of employment opportunities and a lot of further education opportunities. So for any students out there who are getting their results today, it's a good day, it's an optimistic day, and no matter the results, there's good times ahead.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm sure lots of people waiting anxiously this morning. Let's find out more. Head teacher at the independent school LVS Ascot, Christine Cunliffe, joins us in the studio. Good morning, Christine. How are you feeling?
I feel very good this morning, actually. I think it's a relief to be sort of back to normal, if anything. We received the results yesterday. The schools get them the day before, so we've had time to look over them and to digest what our young people have got to look forward to today.
It looks positive, just based on your demeanour.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really worried. Because we were told it'd be somewhere between 2019 and 2021. So I was sort of probably expecting the worst, really, but I'm pleasantly surprised. Took some time to ponder over everything last night, and I'm looking forward to today.
What's happening with clearing? Sorry, Eamonn, because lots of students who maybe just missed those grades, who then won't get their university places, are going to have a more tough time today than they would have done in previous years.
Yeah, absolutely. So even though the grades look good, we won't know on an individual basis until 8 o'clock this morning. And the children will know whether they've got into their first choices or not. So that's the big thing for us today.
Christine, a lot of people, you know, naturally enough, they talk about the pupils, they talk about parents of pupils. What about the teachers? What about the teachers through all of this? Because the last 2 years, big pressure on you guys. I mean, you're criticised for doing it one way, you're criticised for doing it the other. You had to make the assessments for the...
It shaped me as a person. I'm from a very working class background. I didn't have the opportunities that my students have, but I made the best out of it. You know, as I say, out of every disappointment, there's an opportunity, and that's my outlook on life.
Well, you're a perfect case study example of it.
Yeah, and you have, yeah, absolutely, you've lived that, you know, so out of disappointment, there is an opportunity, and I hope people bear that in mind today. Well done to you. Look at you. I mean, from whatever, obviously they were in some way disappointing to you, but you become a head teacher of a school in Ascot. Absolutely incredible.
Never saw that one coming.
No, well, there you go.
It wasn't in my life plan.
Well, congratulations, congratulations. That's Christine Cunliffe there. She's also the author of a book called Transforming School Culture Through Lesson Observation. And we're always delighted to see her here in the studio. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And the best of luck to you and all your teachers, as you say,
Yeah.
as well, throughout all of this. With the time, it's 17 minutes past 7. I'm going to bring you up to date with what's happening news-wise. And a 44-year-old man has now been arrested on suspicion of murder following the fatal stabbing of 87-year-old Thomas O'Hanlon in West London. He was stabbed to death while riding his mobility scooter in Greenford. Police described the attack as a shocking act of unprovoked violence.
The government's been accused of being asleep at the wheel over the energy crisis as an Ofgem director quits over the energy price cap. Well, Christine Farnish told The Times she'd resigned because she couldn't support a decision to recover supplier costs by raising customer prices.
The man accused of stabbing Sir Salman Rushdie on stage at an event in New York said he is surprised to hear he's alive. 24-year-old Hadi Matar told the New York Post the author attacked Islam, but didn't say whether his alleged actions were driven by a fatwa issued by Iran in the 1980s. Matar has pleaded not guilty and he's due to appear in court again on Friday. We're going to bring you a very stark package now from France as the number of migrants arriving in Britain this year tops 20,000. GB News has witnessed a cat-and-mouse tactic between French police and those migrants as authorities face an almost impossible task of mounting effective patrols over many, many miles of French coastline.
It's our home and security editor, Mark White, who's been investigating. This is his exclusive.
Pushing off from the northwest coast of France, the latest group of Channel migrants attempting to cross into UK waters. Our drone footage perfectly illustrates how every inch of space on this small boat is taken up with its human cargo. We counted 50 people clambering on board this inflatable, some struggling to get to the boat as it picks up speed.
Look, he's running back.
We're at Gravelines, between Calais and Dunkirk, one of the people smugglers' favoured locations for attempting the crossing. Over days of filming, we witnessed the cat-and-mouse tactics of the police and migrants. From what we saw, French authorities are trying to stop the crossings, using beach buggies to try to intercept groups as they emerge from the dunes, firing tear gas to disperse the migrants. But in truth, despite some successes, there are far too many miles of coastline here for police to mount a fully effective presence. And although these groups are often chased back into the dunes, the people smugglers simply marshal them again, and when the police move down the beach to chase their next group, they make a dash for the sea. The local lifeguards have become used to multiple daily small boat launches. They're not officially allowed to intervene, but have helped when the boats get into difficulties.
It's sad, you know, we see children, we see a man with his wife, and it's dangerous. So.
The evidence of these migrants is everywhere around here. Discarded clothing littering the shoreline and the dunes along this tourist beach. The local tour guide says it's not just a UK and French issue, that the European Union has to do more.
I went to swimming and I saw a boat, a long boat with I don't know how many people in there, and we were a little bit shocked. I was scared for them because they were too much on the boat.
As concerning as the small boat crisis undoubtedly is for those in the UK, particularly in Kent, for people living here along the northwest coast of France, the impact is huge. In this supermarket car park in Dunkirk, we found this group of Eritreans just sitting around drinking Jack Daniels and smoking cannabis in broad daylight, waiting here until their next attempt to get to the UK.
Do you know anyone in the UK?
In UK? In UK? In UK? I have UK for me. I have UK.
You know people?
I have UK for me.
The people smuggling industry is big business for the criminal gangs, who can net millions of pounds a day. They've become expert at reading the prevailing tide and weather conditions. These life jackets are hardly even hidden among the dunes, waiting for the next group to grab them as they attempt to cross. And we discovered personal papers and other documents discarded by the migrants on the instructions of the people smugglers to make identifying them more difficult for UK authorities. Among the papers, application forms for asylum in countries including Belgium. Further down the beach, more evidence of the French police tactic of slashing and puncturing these inflatables if they can get to them in time. But although some of those initial attempts are frustrated, the vast majority of small boats and their human cargo make it across the English Channel. More than 20,500 so far this year, to add to the tens of thousands who've already entered the UK asylum system. Mark White, GB News.
So that report from Mark White there. As to reaction from you, no one's got an answer for this. No one. The authorities don't have it. No one else seems to have it. Well, Rob says the EU's open border policy doesn't help to stop mass uncontrolled immigration to Britain. They should make sure no one enters the EU illegally at southern borders. Then there'll be far less people making it to northern France and then on to Britain. Easier said than done, Rob, because then you shift the problem that we have further south. Someone's got to make those brutal decisions. I mean, Australia seems to have done this successfully, but they were quite ruthless in sending immigrants and migrants back from their shores. But would there be the political will and would there be the humanitarian will to do just that? It is certainly not an easy situation. There it is. Join in the discussion. That's what you've got to do.
GB Views at gbnews.uk. Coming up, all the big sports stories of the day with, of course, Paul Coit after the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Following the intense thunderstorms that some southern counties saw yesterday, today it's fine in the south, but it is already turning cloudier further north and west, with some outbreaks of rain moving in, this time coming from the Atlantic. The rain not quite as impactful as the intense thunderstorms that have been very hit and miss over the last few days, but nevertheless it's a damp start to the day for western and central Scotland and Northern Ireland. The rain then by late morning pushing into parts of Cumbria, North and West Wales, eventually turning up into the tip of Cornwall. And those outbreaks of rain will be on and off. They'll be light to moderate, but some heavier stuff coming along for North Wales and North West England later. It's replaced by showers for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Cool here with a breeze, 18 to 20 Celsius, but 27 Celsius in the southeast, where it's going to stay mostly sunny after any early residual cloud and showers get out of the way. Then this area of cloud and rain, well, it moves into central areas, the Midlands, southwest England, South Wales through the evening, and then it pushes during the early hours of tomorrow into East Anglia and the southeast. By this time it's turned to showers, some moderate to heavy bursts, but not as lively as recent thunderstorms. 19 Celsius in the southeast, though, a warm night to come, but much fresher conditions further northwest, where it'll be closer to the low to mid-teens, and actually plenty of showers first thing for central and western Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland, Northern England, 1 or 2 turning up for North Wales. But once any early showers move out of the way from the southeast, here it's largely sunny skies, likewise across much of the rest of the south of the UK. But temperatures back to average, we're looking at low 20s generally, and in the north, high teens. Saturday starts off dry, especially in the south, some sunshine here. I think in the north it'll be a blustery day with showers spreading south. And Sunday brings with it more general rain, especially in western areas.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Just looking ahead in an hour's time, 20 past 8, we're going to get both sides of the argument when it comes to cyclists.
Should they face speed limits and should they have number plates? And after 9 o'clock, an exclusive.
Yeah, we're going to be having the first broadcast interview with the mother of Archie Battersby, Holly Dance. It's a privilege to talk to her, but it's a sad privilege as well. And please be involved with that just after 9 o'clock and join in the conversation by emailing us or tweeting us. Okay, here comes your sport back pages today. Look like this. We begin with blown away, that headline there, back page of the Mail. England slipped 116 for 6, day 1 of the first test against South Africa. Mirror leading with a desperation for Manchester United to buy players. They're now linked to Chelsea's Christian Pulisic. And the Sun leads with United as well, saying Sir Jim Ratcliffe is the perfect man to buy the club. Apparently he's the richest man in Britain. And there's me thinking it was Paul Coyte. No, Paul is simply here. Well, if he was, he wouldn't be up at this hour of the morning to discuss.
Oh, there's the pot calling the kettle black, isn't it, eh?
I need the money desperately.
OK, right.
Desperately. Right, so this guy, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, did the Glazers want to sell? That's the question.
Well, there's now, it's all rumours, isn't it? As far as the Glazers are concerned, I think they're happy for a small stake to be sold. So Sir Jim Ratcliffe, through his people, has said that he's very interested. Now, he was involved in when Chelsea was being sold a couple of weeks back, or a couple of months ago, and he wanted part of that. Now, that didn't happen for him. Now, this, for me, seems the perfect fit. There's often when I see, there he is, there's Sir Jim there.
Yeah, but Chelsea were selling, that's the difference.
Well, the thing is, but I think more importantly is that Jim Radcliffe is from the area, Manchester United fan. I mean, often mixing business with pleasure is not a great idea, but if you look at Ineos, his company, and how they're involved in sport, now they already own Nice, Ligue 1 in France, Lausanne in Switzerland, Abidjan over in the Ivory Coast. So that's where they own as far as football clubs concerned. Cycling, of course, there's Team Ineos, 7-time winners of the Tour de France. So huge in cycling. F1, they work with Mercedes. Sailing, they work with Ben Ainsley. Rugby, they sponsor the All Blacks. It goes on. Eliud Kipchoge, when he did the sub-2 hour marathon a couple of years ago, they were heavily involved in that. So sport is very big as far as he's concerned and as far as Ineos is concerned. So I'm just looking at the evidence there. They know football. I'm saying they as a company, but mainly him.
Yeah.
And it just, I think, would be a decent fit. He understands football in this country as well, which I think is the problem that United fans have with the Glazers. They're so far away. It's just a business to them. It needs to be a bit of both, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, OK, but with all those other sporting interests, you've got to ask the same question. But anyway, the Times is reporting that Sir Jim Ratcliffe's spokesperson is saying if the club is for sale, Jim is definitely a potential buyer.
The money's there,
Yeah.
so why not?
That's not like what we heard from Elon Musk. Yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, that was a... I mean, we did say that we thought it was a joke, and it turned out it was a joke. It was just something he put out there. With Radcliffe, this is a different kettle of fish altogether, and I think it would be a decent fit. I really do.
All the track and field, the European Athletics Championships, enjoying those, Paul. What did you make of last night?
Yeah, I really liked it, because Matt Hudson-Smith, now, there's a story behind this. Now, Matt Hudson-Smith has been through a lot. Now, he already had the title, the 400 metres that he won 4 years ago. In between, had a very, very tough time. Mentally, physically, he's lost friends and loved ones. He went through a horrendous injury as well, and was in and admitted that he was in a really, really dark place last year. He's come through and just a brilliant run, and he just blasted through the whole lot yesterday. So the winner of the 400 metres as well. He'd already won bronze in the Worlds, already won silver in the Commonwealth. So to come through and everything that he's been through, it's a great story, and he's a great fella as well. And I'm really pleased for him. So to win the 400 metres last night was excellent.
It's a great distance as well. Did you ever run it?
You know what? It's like the 400. It's like the 400-metre hurdles, which they call the man killer. Yeah. You know, it's just slightly more than a sprint. Yeah. But you've already got. Did you run 400 metres?
I did, and it was the full length of the whole track, of course, the whole track. So you go the first 100. You don't want to be behind, but you don't want to peak too soon. Second 100, and the third, you're getting. Yeah. You're thinking stamina here.
The lactics.
You got to kick in the fourth. Section of it, so I think it's a wonderful test.
Have you discussed that with Chris Akabusi? Because
not really.
Have you never brought it up and said, by the way...
In fairness, I was 14 at the time. So
OK.
It's a long time ago.
Because Chris, and the great history that we've got in 400-metre running, especially in the relay, Chris in 91, and the World Championships, and that final leg, because the whole story was there was him and Roger Black changed. He would be the anchor leg. And then it was like the night before, and Chris said, well, I'm going to run this, going against the world champion, it was Antonio Pettigrew, just one of the great runs. And we've always got great pedigree in the 400 metres relay, which hasn't been for a while.
But I think this stuff on television, the way it has been, it's inspiration to a lot of youngsters, and they need that. They need to see people doing it and enjoying it. And athletics, track and field is just fantastic to be involved in.
Absolutely.
I can give you one more story. What do you want it to be?
Well, let's go with the cricket. Typically, we've had no rain for ages, and then as soon as the cricket comes back, there's been 6 weeks off as far as the test, then the rain comes down.
Torrential.
Now some papers are saying that it's a bit of a disaster, 116 for 6 there, England, but I really don't think it was. I think the batsmen looked OK, the 6 wickets had gone down, but as far as the weather was concerned, it was perfect for bowlers. South Africa played very well, England lost the toss. The game ain't over yet. The weather's going to be fine. OK, it was rained off for most of it yesterday, but I think we've got a very good test ahead of us with Bazball, of course. Brendan Cullen.
In America, Emma Raducanu still going well. She beat the former world #1 Victoria Azarenka just after 24 hours after beating Serena Williams. So fingers crossed for her as well.
Good for her.
Paul, good man. Cheers.
See you.
Thank you very much indeed. We'll take a break there.
We're going to be looking at the papers when we return with David Wooding and Nikki Hodgson. Don't miss it.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Here we are at time 22 minutes before 8 o'clock. We're going to go through the newspapers, and we do that in the company of political journalist Mr. David Wooding, and he's joined by author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson. And it's the rail strikes you want to look at first. They get underway today. You're taking the story from the Daily Mail.
Yes, Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, or the current Transport Secretary, should I say. He may not be there when Liz Truss takes over, assuming she wins. He's come up with a 16-point plan to smash the rail strikers, as the headline says in the Daily Mail. Now, this will be joy to hard-hit commuters who are struggling and will be struggling today, but it will anger the unions. What he says is that Margaret Thatcher did a good job in taming the unions, and he wants to carry on doing so. And in this 16-point plan, there's some interesting elements here. First of all, there's one to allow agency workers to take over vital services. The idea is to curb strike action which affects people's lives and prevents other people from doing their jobs. So, for instance, if GB News went on strike or newspapers go on strike, it doesn't have an impact. It deprives us of a service that we may enjoy, but it doesn't interfere with our lives. Whereas the rails, people can't get to their jobs. So that's what he wants to do. He wants to increase the amount of time. Notice that is given from 2 weeks to 4 weeks. And the one I find most interesting is that he wants to tax strike pay. Now, the RMT, the rail union, have got a big slush fund which they've been paying to back these workers. That will be taxable. So lots of restrictions on.
Do you think I've got an idea. Why not just fund the rail network properly? Why not pay people a decent living wage on this? Why not respect the jobs that they do instead of all this talk about smashing people that obviously feel that they haven't got enough money? They are the working poor.
Absolutely. I mean, there's the other side of that argument, of course, is a lot of people are saying that some of these train drivers involved in strikes are in a damn good wage, over £50,000 a year, and they feel that they're suffering as a result of that. Of course, what really needs to happen is sides need to have their heads banged together and come to some kind of a deal.
But there's a lot of criticism of Grant Shapps for not being involved in direct negotiations with both parties. Do you think that's fair?
No, it's probably not. I mean, they privatised the rail industry, and so it's for the rail industry as a private company to sort it out. This is one of the arguments about whether they should have privatised it in the first place. Government really shouldn't be interfering in this, but it has to be seen to be doing something, because everybody's saying the country's going down the pan because we've got inflation, which we talked about in the last hour, and now we've got strikes.
Nobody cares about anything until it directly affects them.
Yeah.
So that's the purpose of a strike. Actually, that's the idea. It should affect a wider audience on all of this. But, you know, we have got basically a Victorian infrastructure for rail, and the dilemma will be to modernise that. That means losing jobs as well. But it's so complicated. I just don't understand why we get it so badly wrong with rails, and we have done continuously in this country. But
well, you're right. We've only built 2 railways since the Victorian age. That was HS1, and now, well, trying to build HS2.
HS2.
Do you know, Eamonn, you make a good point, because what I found stood outside, particularly Euston Station, which is where the headquarters are, and we'll be speaking to our reporter just after 8, who'll be there as well in front of the picket line, is when you speak to people commuting who find out they can't commute, they say, I support the right to strike, but just not this one. Because
it affects me. Yeah.
Let's move on to the Telegraph. Liz Truss is talking about, warnings about a cashless future.
Yes, I mean, it's impossible to have not noticed, isn't it, that it's very hard to pay for things in cash these days. And Liz Truss has promised that she's got to protect people's right to use cash, because it's the most vulnerable people in our society that tend to use it. So pensioners, the disabled, other minority groups. And, you know, there are lots of people that are still unbanked in this country. You know, people that just don't have bank accounts. They do only get paid in cash and work in cash, or, you know, share cash between their family and friends. And so, yeah, use of cash as a form of payment in the UK is forecast to fall just by 9%. By 2028. And, you know, the knock-on effect of that is that the most vulnerable people won't be able to buy things like their groceries. So we've got to protect the right to use cash.
Well, actually, there's been some interesting research saying the use of cash might temporarily at least go up because people are using it as a method of budgeting.
Yes, absolutely. There's this thing called cash stuffing, which you might have seen on TikTok or other kind of money-saving posts on channels. And people basically take their whole wage out at the beginning of the month. They separate it into individual envelopes for all the expenses they have, whether it's travel, food, energy bills, whatever it is. And then they work to those budgets. And apparently it's a very good way of physically budgeting, because it's just harder to spend a note than to tap with your phone or your card, isn't it?
It is. I'm hesitating here because David's chosen a story that talks about gout, which I believe there's been an increase of. But the remedy, I'm just thinking, have I read this right? Bake an owl, O-W-L, as in bird.
Yes.
Right?
So there's loads of recipes here. In fact, about 8,000 recipes for everyday aches and pains and for some more serious complaints. What's happened is the universities of Cambridge, the library, the museum, the colleges have discovered these manuscripts, 180 manuscripts dating back to medieval times. The oldest is about 1,000 years old, but most of them the 14th and 15th century. And it's fascinating reading about some of the alternative, as we would call them nowadays, recipes. And for gout, it is you bake an owl, you grind it to a powder.
Oh dear.
You mix it with honey.
Oh, dear.
And then that is what you take for gout. Now,
is that with the feathers or without, David?
Yes.
I was just wondering. With the feathers?
With the feathers.
Yeah, or without?
I think you might have to pluck it first. And then for a cataract, which was described as web in the eye, you take the gallbladder of a hare, some honey, you mix it, and then for 3 nights you apply it over the eye with a feather.
Oh, the application method.
And for bad joints, you stuff a puppy with snails and sage and roast it over a fire.
Oh no!
I mean, but there's a serious element to this. This was what people were trying to do in the days when there were no. It makes you lucky. Think how lucky we are today with all the.
But also, they obviously used to eat owls and puppies.
Well, I'm sure they did, yes.
Well, yes, they obviously was acceptable. Now we find it horrendous, of course.
But would they have had? They wouldn't have had any intensive farming in those days. It would have just been
owls and puppies. Anything you can catch up a tree or whatever. Thanks for that. That's put me off my breakfast. Right, so here we go, Nikki. A-level, and the Times are calling it A-level chaos.
Yeah, so we've already talked this morning about the fact that there are going to be people that miss their university places today despite getting the grades, or even if they miss the grade by one place. But this is specifically to do with medicine degrees. So medicine in this country, the numbers for that we take on each year for doctors are capped by the NHS. And the idea is that you're meant to kind of choose the absolute cream of the crop so that we get the best doctors for the service. But this year, because of the kind of oversubscription, there are going to be people with 3 A-star grades or more that are turned away from medicine. Now, what I don't understand about this is we have a vast shortage of doctors in this country.
Huge. Something like 50,000 or something.
The doctors that are in positions are completely overworked because they're working, you know, the equivalent of 2 jobs. Why is it that if somebody, you know, one of the things they say is that sometimes at interviews somebody doesn't display enough empathy, for example. Well, what if they get the grades? Why can't you put them on some kind of intensive training to, you know, to kind of enhance those soft skills that they need?
You should be grateful that people want to be medics.
Absolutely, and this is putting them off, and it's saying that, well, sometimes they can get in through a graduate route, but who's got the money to spend on a 1 degree and then go into medicine after? It doesn't make any sense. We've got to find a better way of filtering through so that we get the best people to the top, because there's obviously still a lot of good people that we could be employing.
Because we've been talking today about the fact that your A-levels don't necessarily have to define you, but if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, then they absolutely are going to. So that's heart-wrenching for people today who'll miss out on their medicine place, or maybe have to think about taking a year out to resit exams to have another stab at it next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just doesn't make sense, because if it's other skills that doctors are lacking, which they have to learn eventually in the trades anyway, then teach them, find a summer school that you can put on, do something else.
OK, now we go to the Express. This is page 20 on the Express. Now, when we talk about the consequences of COVID, I haven't heard this one. Catching COVID increases the risk of psychosis.
Yes, we're only just learning all the side effects of COVID. I mean, people, we heard about long COVID. It's, you know, the first year or two were spent, how do we stop COVID? How do we tackle it? We got the vaccine. We had all the restrictions in place. Now we're learning what the long-term effects are. And this study has shown that it increases the risks of psychosis and dementia. So the NHS found that there's an influx of depression, anxiety, and cases of that nature in the 2 months after somebody had recovered from COVID. Quite a spike there. But then they found that up to 2 years afterwards, or after 2 years, there were more debilitating illnesses such as brain fog, dementia, psychotic disorder, epilepsy. This was done by a study of 1.5 million survivors of COVID. Now, the numbers, I have to say, note of caution here, the numbers are not huge. So you're talking about 450 per 10,000 among over 65s, but that has nearly doubled on what it was before. So there is an increased risk, but it's not one that we should be worrying too much about.
Let's just look, finally, Nick, if we can, in the Express as well, talking about this period of time, the summer, and how isolating it can be for elderly people. Why is that? Yeah, it's a bit of a counterintuitive story, because we tend to think that in the winter, elderly people are at their loneliest, but apparently it's actually at the summer. A study of 1,400 retired people has found that 27% of them feel disconnected when their family's social schedule ramps up in the warmer months. And around 40% can go several days during the summer without having a conversation face-to-face. So it's kind of a warning. You know, if you've got elderly relatives, elderly friends, make a point of going to see them during the summer, because actually that's when they feel more isolated. Nikki, brilliant. David, thank you very much. Really appreciate both of your time. They'll be back in the studio in about 40 minutes' time to go through the papers again.
The IFS has warned that the tax cuts promised by Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak may not be possible after inflation rose above that 10% mark, a new 40-year high.
So does the former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, have an answer? Well, we're joined now by one of his supporters, former Conservative Chief Whip, Mark Harper. Good morning, Mark. What is the solution then? Inflation skyrocketing, going to go up higher, which may now mean that the promises Rishi Sunak's made become redundant.
Well, I think what comes through very clearly from what the IFS has said is that it's exactly what Rishi's been saying, that the top priority, the first priority of government, should be dealing with inflation and getting a grip of inflation, because inflation makes everybody poorer, pushes up the cost of delivering services, and it increases the cost of servicing our debt. So that has to be the first priority, and it's only when you've dealt with inflation and you're growing the economy, that you can then look to make tax cuts once you've got the public finances in shape. And it's, by contrast, the reason why putting over £50 billion of tax cuts funded by borrowing, as his opponent wants to do, that'll make inflation worse, and I don't think is rooted in the economic reality facing the country at the moment.
Mark, there's a bit of a battle, isn't there? Because the leadership campaign feels as though, and we've had this from political commentators who've been on the programme today, as though it's dragging a little bit. And Rishi Sunak, by all accounts in the polls, Liz Truss has really widened her lead. So how are you, as one of his supporters, going to sort of reinvigorate this, get us interested again and say, you know, Rishi can do this? Because you're, if anything, being benefited by having just that couple of weeks extra to try and pull ahead in that lead, which looks as though, according to the polls, is almost impossible.
Well, look, a couple of things. First of all the way through this contest, it feels just like the 2015 election, when we got told all the way through by every poll that we weren't going to win. And then, funnily enough, in the actual poll that mattered, the one where real people actually did voting, we won. And I've been at a number of meetings that Rishi's done, both hustings with both candidates, but also meetings he's done by himself. He's been having a fantastic response from our members. I think our members recognise that his policies to deal with the economy are the ones that are going to deal with both inflation, but also helping vulnerable and poorer people. This winter, you're not going to be able to help pensioners and people on working their socks off on the national living wage by tax cuts, because they don't pay enough tax. You're going to have to give them direct support to help them pay their energy bills. And when you explain that to people, he's getting a lot of support. So I'm afraid I don't think the polls reflect reality on the ground. So I'm very confident and continuing to make the argument for him. I think the government that gets elected, whoever wins this contest, is going to face some incredibly tough economic headwinds, and it's about having the policies to deal with those that I think is necessary, and Rishi's got the policies to deal with those, and I think his arguments have just been reinforced by what the IFS said last night.
Let's talk about the numbers we do know about then, rather than polls, which of course are speculative. MPs. Rishi Sunak has of course touted support from MPs, but more MPs now support Liz Truss than they do Rishi Sunak. Why is that?
Well, he topped the poll on votes of MPs, so when MPs were actually voting at every stage of the contest. So he topped the poll every stage of the contest when MPs were asked to vote, and came out of that ahead. We're now battling between members, so what MPs say now isn't important. What's important are what the members are doing, and as I said, he's going around the country doing enormous numbers of meetings with members, meeting thousands of members around the country, not just in the hustings, but in meetings he's doing directly. And he's been getting a terrific response. I've seen that for myself on the ground when he's been challenged, both in terms of his remarks, but then he's been dealing with questions incredibly well on a whole range of issues, but also on the economy. That's the number one issue facing the country. It's about dealing with inflation, helping people through the winter, getting the economy growing again, and then delivering tax cuts when we can afford it. That's the right plan for the challenges facing the country, which is why I'm very confident and continuing to support him.
Just finally, one of the things you've really been campaigning for Rishi Sunak is saying that he's honest, that he's an honest politician. In fact, on one of your tweets, you say he'll bring honesty, integrity, grip and determination. That word honesty is the first word that you choose to stress. That's a sorry state of affairs, isn't it? If saying that someone will tell the truth is one of the main things you're campaigning on.
Well, look, I think we have to be honest about why we're having this contest. We're having this contest because the current Prime Minister made some very bad judgments on a number of serious issues and then wasn't straightforward about it. And I think one of the things, if you look at why a number of voters who voted for us in 2019 have turned away from the Conservative Party, is because they didn't like that. And I think one of the ways that you get them back is you tell the truth and you're honest with them. And I think one of the things about this contest is Rishi's being straightforward and honest with people about the really serious economic challenge facing us. I mean, I heard that in your previous discussion. Inflation needs to be dealt with, it needs to be brought down, and the government needs to work with the Bank of England to make that happen, not big unfunded tax cuts that make the situation worse and life harder for people across the country.
But thank you very much for your time, Conservative MP, clearly supporting Rishi Sunak. Appreciate it. Now, do
Thank
stay
you.
with us. If you are travelling this morning, I'm going to be hopefully getting on one of those very few trains running later on today. We'll bring you the latest on today's strike action live outside of Euston. That's to come after the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Following the intense thunderstorms that some southern counties saw yesterday, today it's fine in the south, but it is already turning cloudier further north and west, with some outbreaks of rain moving in, this time coming from the Atlantic. The rain not quite as impactful as the intense thunderstorms that have been very hit and miss over the last few days, but nevertheless it's a damp start to the day for western and central Scotland and Northern Ireland. The rain then by late morning pushing into parts of Cumbria, North and West Wales, eventually turning up into the tip of Cornwall. And those outbreaks of rain will be on and off. They'll be light to moderate, but some heavier stuff coming on for North Wales and North West England later. It's replaced by showers for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Cool here with a breeze, 18 to 20 Celsius, but 27 Celsius in the southeast, where it's going to stay mostly sunny after any early residual cloud and showers get out of the way. Then this area of cloud and rain, well, it moves into central areas, the Midlands, southwest England, South Wales through the evening, and then it pushes during the early hours of tomorrow into East Anglia and the southeast. By this time it's turned to showers, some moderate to heavy bursts, but not as lively as recent thunderstorms. 19 Celsius in the southeast, though, a warm night to come, but much fresher conditions further northwest, where it'll be closer to the low to mid-teens, and actually plenty of showers first thing for central and western Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland, Northern England, 1 or 2 turning up for North Wales. But once any early showers move out of the way from the southeast, here it's largely sunny skies, likewise across much of the rest of the south of the UK. But temperatures back to average, we're looking at low 20s generally, and in the north, high teens. Saturday starts off dry, especially in the south, some sunshine here. I think in the north it'll be a blustery day with showers spreading south. And Sunday brings with it more general rain, especially in western areas.
There's just 2 weeks left of voting in the battle to become Britain's next Prime Minister. Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak have been dashing around the country, and tomorrow night they make their pitches to Conservative voters in the heart of Labour-run Manchester. But do either of them have what it takes to defend and maintain Boris Johnson's mighty majority? GB News is proud to be hosting the Conservative hustings in Manchester, live and exclusive from 7 p.m. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
3 days of transport strikes begin today with travel chaos across the country.
A very good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Thursday, the 18th of August. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Rosie Wright.
Thanks for your company, and here's what's leading the news this morning. Over 45,000 rail workers begin striking again today in a dispute over pensions and pay.
The travel disruption will continue for 3 days, with the London Underground and some bus services also affected.
Students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland are opening their A-level results this morning, with grades expected to be lower than last year because it's the first time since 2019 that the results will be based on in-person exams.
And cyclists, should they be required to have number plates for their bikes and a speed limit like motorists? Well, Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says there should be a review. Let us know what you think.
Join in the discussion. Here's how you do it. You can email, you can tweet as well at GB News. We'd love to hear from you. We are hearing from you quite well. And, you know, a lot of people, you put out points there. We were talking about cost of living. We talk about it all the time. Howard says, I see queues outside McDonald's, KFC. I don't see any Chinese or Indian takeaways closing. I don't see any less crowds at football matches. So where is this cost of living crisis? Now, there is a cost of living crisis, but I think the thing he's trying to say is some people find money to spend on things that maybe are not essential to them, but then people do need a bit of release as well, and you may get people who work in those industries saying, yes, our turnover is down, our footfall is down, so let us know. Join the discussion.
It's our top story. Commuters across the country facing a fresh wave of disruption today. 45,000 rail workers are on strike. It's a long-running dispute. You know about this over pay and pensions. Today, only 20% of services will be running.
Well, more strikes will take place over the next 3 days. London Underground, some bus services striking on Friday.
Let's find out more and go and speak to our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, who's live outside Euston Station. Paul, good morning. How different is today to the strikes we've already seen so far this summer?
Morning, Rosie. Morning, Eamonn. It's funny you should say that, Rosie, because frankly, you could have just run the same report that I did about 3 weeks ago, standing right on this spot, and pretty much nothing's changed, right? There's a 5% pay offer on the table from Network Rail. For the unions haven't accepted it. It's even worse, the negotiations with the train companies in terms of trying to get somewhere, getting the two sides to meet, frankly. And the unions, the RMT and the TSSA and Unite as well, who are also on strike today, are simply saying, look, that's not good enough. 5% isn't good enough. We need more. And if we're going to get more, we don't want the changes to our employees' terms and conditions that are attached. For example, working exclusively night shifts. So only doing night shifts is one of the ways in which the unions are claiming Network Rail wants to change terms and conditions. They're saying, look, our members signed up saying we will do some nights on a rotation and then we'll do some days, but asking our members signed up saying that we're only will work some nights but not exclusively nights. And spending your whole career working nights is just too much for our members, and they didn't sign up for that. So this is where we're at the moment, frankly. This morning, the RMT have written to Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, saying, look, it is you that in the background that is holding back the negotiations. You are preventing Network Rail from making a decent pay offer, that you're preventing the train companies from making a decent pay offer. And listening to the TSSA this morning, they point to the deal that they've done with Merseyrail up in Liverpool. Merseyrail, nothing to do with the government, nothing to do with, they're not under the mandate of the Transport Secretary. He says that taking the government out of the situation shows that, look, we've come to a decent agreement there with the train company up in Merseyside, and that's the kind of thing that we need to happen here. So really, nothing's changed in this dispute.
Paul, thank you very much. He'll be covering the strikes today, and there'll be, of course, later on this week, and there's some London Underground strikes as well. Paul Hawkins, our national reporter there outside of Euston Station.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get views on the rail strike. Kenneth says these rail strikes are nothing to do with conditions or pay. It's all to do with the grassroots overthrow of the government. And remember, we had an ex-union man today talking about a national strike. There should be a national strike. Unions should join up over this. As well. John says, I totally agree with the union chap. Our politicians have broken this country and I have regularly voted Conservative, and he's saying that. Philip says, difficult not to support the rail workers. Footballers on £250,000 a week, bonuses of millions to utility bosses, costs of living through the roof, government throwing billions literally down the drain.
There are people, though, who are angry about that rallying call for a general strike. Jacqueline says a definite no. The majority of the population are not in unions and can't negotiate their pay like that. Rail workers should not be holding the country to ransom. And Kenneth says a general strike is nothing but an attempt to unseat the government. Well, do you support the strike action? Let us know. You can join the conversation. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email.
You know, something I always think about is, you know, we're educated to A-level standard, but are you educated into what your career should be or what you should be thinking about? You know, it's funny, a few years down the line, people may find themselves in a position where they're striking about pay and conditions. Now, you students doing your A-levels, have you thought about what the area of expertise or work is that you're going to enter into? Because so many across the country will receive their A-level results and have received them and are opening them as I speak. And they're online, they're coming through the letterbox as well. But the interesting thing is, Rosie, this is the first year that results are going to be based on in-person exams since the pandemic.
Rather than teachers' predictions, of course, and that meant that grades were inflated. And so this year, we are expecting, the predictions are that grades will be lower than the past 2 years. Well, initial UCAS figures show the total number of students accepted onto a degree course has decreased 2% on the same level as last year. So there's about 425,000 taking up places so far.
OK, for more, let's speak to Executive Head Teacher at My Online Schooling, and that's Rob Leach. Rob, it's really interesting to talk to you. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Eamonn. Good morning, Rosie. Great to be with you.
Thank you, Rob, because we want to hear what you do. Online schooling, you do it differently, but the thing is, you actually, if I'm right, this may not be your words, these are my words, but the education system that we know and that we're used to, you have your doubts about it, don't you, that it is actually fit for purpose?
Yes, I do. And of course, this morning, a big congratulations to all students who are opening those envelopes as we speak. But I do think it's a good opportunity for us just to reflect on the overall system, particularly the exam system. And as you mentioned a moment ago, what sort of skills and qualifications our young people are taking into the modern workplace. The system, education and exams very much has its roots in the 19th century. And whether that's still fit for purpose in the 21st century, I think is an important discussion to have.
What is your philosophy? I mean, you've got the stage here. What would you say to people just as to what makes you tick and where you think things should be?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at just the experience that the current A-level students have had this year, so these were students who would have had their GCSEs cancelled. They are students that would have missed out on a huge amount of schooling because of the decisions to lock down. They are students who even this year, back in school, as we moved from the pandemic, had huge levels of absence still linked to COVID. So over 21% of the A-level students collecting their results today missed at least 20 school days this year. Teacher absence would have been even higher. The recruitment and retention issue for teachers more generally, 50% of teachers looking to leave the profession within the next 5 years. You add all of these elements together, and I think it's fair to say that the current cohort of students have had a really tough time this year. And yet, as a system, we've gone back to the pre-pandemic status quo when it comes to these high-stake, cliff-edge, one-off set-piece examinations, which can give students grades that stay with them for life and perhaps are not the most accurate way of measuring how ready they are to embrace the opportunities.
Everyone will have at home is, what do you do instead? If it's not going to be those exams, or maybe exams teamed with coursework, how else? Because we've had a trial now of teachers being able to evaluate, and too many of them got predicted that they'd do well. So that hasn't really proved successful either.
Yeah, it's a great point. But then if we look at 2018, when there were public examinations in the same way to this year, 20% of grades that were challenged were changed. So I would argue that probably they're not very accurate anyway. And there is the real opportunity to do things in a different way. So I'm the executive head teacher of My Online Schooling. We are a fully online school. We have over 1,000 pupils across 80 countries around the world, 50% of them roughly in the UK, 50% are international students. I was in classrooms recently where I had students who were debating points in a geography class, and had a student in Kenya debating with a student in Mexico, debating with a student in the Scottish borders, one in Birmingham, and the richness of the conversation and the opportunity to make real progress without the disruptions that you so often get in physical schools mean that our students are able to make great academic progress, but we're also at the forefront of being able to use technology and to innovate in a new way. So when it comes to exams, we have got artificial intelligence, we've got augmented reality, virtual reality. We can use digital e-portfolios, which means that students can evidence their work over a period of time, rather than getting to the end of 2 years and having a one-off exam, which is not good for their mental health or their well-being, and actually often leads to underperformance in those exams too. We have all of those options at our fingertips, but we continue to use a system with its roots in the 19th century, and that doesn't really equip our young people for the 21st century.
That's Rob Leach. He's Executive Head Teacher, My Online Schooling. Rob is calling for educational reform. Have a think about it. What do you think? Do you agree with him? Join in the conversation this morning and let us know what you think. Rob, we'd love to have you back at some stage in the future just to spread this out a bit and talk more in depth about, because it's just something that I think people don't have to face, they don't have to discuss unless they have to. So thank you very much for raising it on this very important of days. Rob Leach there, thank you.
Thank you.
Now it's 13 minutes past 8. As the number of migrants arriving in the UK this year tops 20,000, well, GB News has witnessed the cat and mouse tactics that are being played out between the French police and the migrants.
This is a graphic report from our Home Affairs editor, Mark White. You could say the authorities here and in France face an almost impossible task. Judge for yourself.
Pushing off from the northwest coast of France, the latest group of Channel migrants attempting to cross into UK waters. Our drone footage perfectly illustrates how every inch of space on this small boat is taken up with its human cargo. We counted 50 people clambering on board this inflatable, some struggling to get to the boat as it picks up speed.
Look, he's running back.
We're at Gravelines, between Calais and Dunkirk, one of the people smugglers' favoured locations for attempting the crossing. Over days of filming, we witnessed the cat and mouse tactics of the police and migrants. From what we saw, French authorities are trying to stop the crossings, using beach buggies to try to intercept groups as they emerge from the dunes, firing tear gas to disperse the migrants. But in truth, despite some successes, there are far too many miles of coastline here for police to mount a fully effective presence. And although these groups are often chased back into the dunes, the people smugglers simply marshal them again, and when the police move down the beach to chase their next group, they make a dash for the sea. The local lifeguards have become used to multiple daily small boat launches. They're not officially allowed to intervene, but have helped when the boats get into difficulties.
It's sad, you know. We see children, we see a man with his wife, and it's dangerous. So.
The evidence of these migrants is everywhere around here. Discarded clothing littering the shoreline and the dunes along this tourist beach. The local tour guide says it's not just a UK and French issue, that the European Union has to do more.
I went to swimming and I saw a boat, a long boat with I don't know how many people in there, and we were a little bit shocked. I was scared for them because they were too much on the boat.
As concerning as the small boat crisis undoubtedly is for those in the UK, particularly in Kent, for people living here along the northwest coast of France, the impact is huge. In this supermarket car park in Dunkirk, we found this group of Eritreans just sitting around drinking Jack Daniels and smoking cannabis in broad daylight, waiting here until their next attempt to get to the UK.
Do you know anyone in the UK?
UK. In UK. I have UK for me. I have UK.
You know people?
I have UK for me.
The people smuggling industry is big business for the criminal gangs, who can net millions of pounds a day. They've become expert at reading the prevailing tide and weather conditions. These life jackets are hardly even hidden among the dunes, waiting for the next group to grab them as they attempt to cross. And we discovered personal papers and other documents discarded by the migrants on the instructions of the people smugglers to make identifying them more difficult for UK authorities. Among the papers, application forms for asylum in countries including Belgium. Further down the beach, more evidence of the French police tactic of slashing and puncturing these inflatables if they can get to them in time. But although some of those initial attempts are frustrated, the vast majority of small boats and their human cargo make it across the English Channel. More than 20,500 so far this year, to add to the tens of thousands who've already entered the UK asylum system. Mark White, GB News.
And just extraordinary footage. So there's a team at GB News spent time in France trying to work out, because Mark was on the programme earlier this week and we were talking about, there seemed to be this suggestion that French police were trying different tactics, like puncturing the side of the boats. They've obviously seen evidence of that, but the point Mark makes is that the length of the coastline is just too long and too vast to be effectively patrolled. And you can see the tactics that they're using are astute. And so far, they've been extremely effective.
We ask you what you think the answer should be, because the authorities on either side of the channel don't seem to have any answer to all of this. If you think you can enlighten us, join in the discussion. GBViews at gbnews.uk. You just twitched there. Is there anything you want to add? No?
No, I was just looking at some views. Lots of you getting in touch, actually, and we'll mention this again later on the programme about the rail strikes, of course, in force today. 45,000 rail workers not turning up. But from transport on the rails, what about cycling instead?
Yeah, because if you can't get on a train or a tube, you might want to get on a bike. Now, that's been very much in the news this week because there is a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit. Can it be imposed on cyclists? So we're going to debate that and the safety of cycling right after this break. First, the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Following the intense thunderstorms that some southern counties saw yesterday, today it's fine in the south, but it is already turning cloudier further north and west, with some outbreaks of rain moving in, this time coming from the Atlantic. The rain not quite as impactful as the intense thunderstorms that have been very hit and miss over the last few days, but nevertheless it's a damp start to the day for western and central Scotland and Northern Ireland. The rain then by late morning pushing into parts of Cumbria, North and West Wales, eventually turning up into the tip of Cornwall. And those outbreaks of rain will be on and off. They'll be light to moderate, but some heavier stuff coming along for North Wales and North West England later. It's replaced by showers for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Cool here with a breeze, 18 to 20 Celsius, but 27 Celsius in the southeast, where it's going to stay mostly sunny after any early residual cloud and showers get out of the way. Then this area of cloud and rain, well, it moves into central areas, the Midlands, southwest England, South Wales through the evening, and then it pushes During the early hours of tomorrow into East Anglia and the southeast. By this time it's turned to showers, some moderate to heavy bursts, but not as lively as recent thunderstorms. 19 Celsius in the southeast, though, a warm night to come, but much fresher conditions further northwest, where it'll be closer to the low to mid-teens, and actually plenty of showers first thing for central and western Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland, Northern England, 1 or 2 turning up for North Wales. But once any early showers move out of the way from the southeast, here it's largely sunny skies, likewise across much of the rest of the south of the UK. But temperatures back to average, we're looking at low 20s generally, and in the north, high teens. Saturday starts off dry, especially in the south, some sunshine here. I think in the north it'll be a blustery day with showers spreading south. And Sunday brings with it more general rain, especially in western areas.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
OK, we're going to ask you to get on your bike now, or maybe not get on your bike. We had proposals this week which created a lot of controversy, a lot of talking points from the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps.
Yes, it's a review into cyclists and cycling. Should bikes have number plates on them and a speed limit imposed of 20 miles per hour? You know those residential zones you go to where it's 20 miles per hour? Well, Grant Shapps is saying, well, if you're cycling, maybe you should stick to it too. OK, here to debate this, black cab driver Mark Baxter, who incidentally is also a cyclist, and climate columnist and top cyclist for The Independent, Donncha McCarthy. Very good to see both of you. Donncha, first of all, right, number plates, 20 mile per hour speed limit, helmets. Why not?
It's taking a hammer, not to a nut, but to a breadcrumb on a glass table. Because actually what we need to do is encourage more people to cycle, not cycle. Because what does it do? It reduces congestion, it makes people healthier, It reduces pollution, reduces climate emissions. So what we want to be doing is encouraging people. What this would do is that people this morning with this train strike want to get on their bike to go to work. They'd have to have a licence, they'd have to have insurance, so £200 maybe. And there's, let's say, a nurse and a fireman married to each other, and the 2 kids are going to school. So that'd be £800 a year for them to cycle. That's nuts.
Mark, is that nuts?
I think it's crazy, absolutely crazy. I think that people are losing complete sort of track that London is a metropolis, OK? And there are so many people saying, get on your bike, get on your bike. We have people coming from all over the world, and it can take them over an hour and a half to get from one side of London to the next side of London because of the rightful thing is that we have put the infrastructure in for the cyclists. We spent a lot of money, and we spent a lot, and rightfully so, because we need to make sure that people are safe when they're on our roads. I've got no problem with that as a cyclist. But we also have to think about that we need to get people moving around our city, okay? And we can't say to people who arrive in our, get on your bike all the time. It's lovely. I can just imagine coming in from New York and then getting onto a Boris bike. Fantastic.
Well, of course, that ain't going to happen, but you will say get into a black cab, of which you are a purveyor of.
Of course I will, but I also say you've also got the underground, you've also got other ways of getting around town.
OK, but what is the issue between, say, cabbie drivers in particular and cyclists?
I don't particularly have a problem with cyclists, because I always think that we have to share the road. But if we're going to share the road, then I think that cyclists need to be they have to take
regulated.
They have to take, the responsibility for the actions that they take on the road too.
So you should be able to identify them, track them down if needed through a registration plate.
I mean that is near impossible. I think that's going to be an impossible. I can understand that, as is a 20-mile-an-hour speed. Well, we're going to put speedos onto bicycles and stuff. But this whole thing needs to go to the education of cyclists as well. And I don't think we've gone far enough down that route too.
You know what I'm thinking? I'm hearing the both of you here, and I'm thinking maybe there's a lot of common ground between you two. Maybe you're agreeing on a lot of things.
I don't see everything he said. I agree with a lot of it. Actually, one of the interesting things is about think cyclists and cabbies have potentially a lot in common. In central London, you can take 2,000 cars down a road an hour. You can take 12,000 cyclists. It's so much more efficient, and it creates space for the cabbies.
I get that, but then Mark's point is you ain't going to arrive at one of the international airports and then say, give me a bike to get to my hotel in central London.
And nobody's saying that.
Right.
There's still space for black cabbies on London's roads, still space for the tourists. But actually, where they have put in the cycle lanes in central London, such as along the embankment, the Corporation of London's done analysis on it, and since they put in the cycle lane, congestion's down 15%, which means there's more space for black cabbies, which is really good. That's what the Corporation of London has said.
Don't even start me on the embankment, because that is a fabulous thing that they've done there for the cyclists. Unless, of course, you've got Lycra Larry, who wants to go at 100 miles an hour faster than the people that are in that bicycle lane. And then he comes onto my lane too. So not only is there a refuge for people to cycle down there that's safe, you've still got those that want to take part in the Tour de France on the main road.
So what can you do about those? I mean, you say that you can't implement a number plate. It would be an impossible situation. So how do you track them?
We do need to find some... I mean, Eamonn, we have so much more going for us nowadays with technology. There has to be some way of chipping a bicycle. There must be something that we can do that allows people... There must be, because... The amount of red lights that are jumped by the minority of cyclists. I'm not going to say that 100% of cyclists do it, but we know that it happens. Okay.
But how many people a year are killed by red light jumping by cyclists ever?
Well, we've had...
No, seriously. How many people in the last 10 years
what
were
do you
killed?
think? How do you think?
It's around one person a decade.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, and most people, 99.9% of people killed at red light jumping are killed by drives. And let's talk about pavements. People complain, it's really annoying and it's rude for a cyclist to be on a pavement. I accept that. But the truth is, 100% of people killed on pavements are killed by drivers, not by cyclists. So why is Grant Shapps talking
How many
about?
people are injured by cyclists on pavements, though? You keep talking about the death rate. I understand that, and that's the worst thing that can ever happen. By the way, one death is too many. Okay, but even so, how many people?
5 people a year killed
How
by
many
cows.
people are injured by cyclists on pavements?
It's tiny compared to
not
drivers.
tiny.
Mark, I'm hearing more about people on electric scooters now. Seem to be a bigger fear than cyclists.
Oh, this is the wonderful new thing of London, where we have this trial, which we know a trial never is a trial, okay? And they're literally, I mean, they just fly through everywhere. One minute they're in your left-hand lane, next minute they're on your right-hand lane, then they're sort of flying in front of you, no helmets on.
I think your issue turns out to be the conduct of the people riding the bikes or the scooters rather than the usage of it.
But we need to educate those people. And without some form of them going through an education, whether it be...
A test like a cycling
like a proficiency test.
But we have,
so they have something.
We have loads. There is a thing called bikeability. You don't seem to be aware of it. In nearly every
I'm aware of
nearly
it.
every school in London has cycle training already. Thousands of kids are being educated on how to cycle safely, and that's right. I would say let's make Grant Shapps say every single kid in school will be given free cycle training. That'd be fantastic. But what he's proposing is absolutely nuts because it would deter kids from cycling. And remember, kids in this country suffer more obesity than any other country in Europe. Only 2% of kids cycle to school in Britain. 70% cycle to school in Holland. Why? Because they put infrastructure in. And it means that for that life, they'll have less cancer, less heart disease, and less congestion.
But
It's a win-win.
do you think it would be safe for children to cycle to school? I had about a 45-minute bike ride through central London, and my dad would come with me, at least on the way in, because my parents were concerned that it wouldn't be the safest way for me to travel.
And that's why I'm saying what we're doing is we should be investing in the infrastructure that Holland did. Why do parents allow their kids to cycle to school in Holland? Because they've low-traffic neighbours and they've got bike lanes. Here we spend a tiny percentage. We spend, I think, 1/20th of what the UN says we should be spending on safe infrastructure for cycling. Grant Shapps could make our roads safer for cyclists and less congestion for drivers.
So we haven't got this balance right, Mark. I mean, I would have thought a lot of men and women in your profession over the past 7-8 years or so would have thought that the London authorities, the government in general, were trying to force you guys off the road because traffic is a nightmare in London.
100%. And we are. That's exactly the feeling you get from TfL, you know, who are not fit for purpose anyway. But they don't want us on the roads. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Everything that they do is constructed to take us out of the equation. If you go to the city, for instance...
Oh, come on.
Okay. No, hold on. You've had your moment, hold on.
That's fair enough.
OK, hold on.
List what they haven't
if you go to central London, if you go to the city, where we are taking a lot of people for business and such on, we can't even go down the bus lane there. We literally have to go... if you wanted to go to Liverpool Street Station from London Bridge Station, I have to take you on a 2-mile detour.
Do you know, the thing is, look, listen, I would like to be a cyclist. I'm not. I'm too frightened to be a cyclist, and maybe a lot of the things you say would help make that come about. But I do, honestly, as a motorist, I sit and I look at buses. And there's never anybody on them.
No.
I honestly think there are loads of buses, but there's rarely... I mean, when I was young, buses were packed. Day and night, they seemed to be packed. I don't know, I was a cyclist when I was a kid. I used to cycle to and from school and whatever. Definitely I'd be too frightened for it now. I think we're at a stage where it is such an in-between stage that we're neither favouring the motorists or the cyclists. Are you guys any closer to sharing the road?
As things stand at the moment, there is always going to be that separation because there's no common ground. You talk about the common ground, but there's nowhere in the middle that we can find a safe place. Because, for instance, just recently, 4 weeks ago, had you have taken a trip from Madame Tussauds to King's Cross Station, it would have taken you nearly 15 to 20 minutes. And yet in the last week, when that particular bike lane has been removed, it now takes 6 to 7 minutes.
Well, look,
right? But I think...
Donncha, final word there. Are we any closer to sharing the roads?
Well, the more people who cycle, the less congestion will be in central London. So it's a win-win for both. I don't understand why the cabbies oppose cycling. And the wonderful thing about cycling is you get healthy, you live longer, and you've got less pollution. It's a win-win.
I get all that. Do you get a lot of aggro, though? Do you? I don't know. I've no idea if you do or not.
What we do is we get a lot of people driving with their mobile phones. That's
we get
really
cyclists with their earphones in.
Mobile phones is deadly for people.
Because they're using it often as a sat-nav or listening to music as they're cycling.
Or talking. We often see people talking. So we need action on that. And the other thing we need action on is HGV trucks. 100 people a year killed, pedestrians are killed by HGV trucks. Grant Shapps could bring in law that you have to have visibility, cameras and mirrors. The Mayor of London's done it in London, and the number of people, pedestrians and cyclists killed has gone down. That would be a wonderful thing for Grant Shapps to do.
What about helmets being compulsory?
Sure. Do you think the purpose of helmets is to save lives, yeah?
Yeah.
The cyclists can't wear a crash helmet. as a motorcycle because they're so heavy.
Yeah.
So the helmet that cyclists wear doesn't protect us from a car crash. It protects us from falling off.
Yeah.
So if we really wanted to protect people using helmets, we would require all the people in cars to wear helmets because that's the only way where lives would be saved. Cyclist helmets don't save lives in crashes, unfortunately.
Until we become like Star Trek and you can energise people, you can put them in a transporter or whatever it is, goodness knows what is going to happen. We're at a very interesting stage of this whole, I was going to say issue, but maybe it's a conflict, I don't know, but...
discussion.
Donica McCarthy, thank you very much for your views. Mark, have a safe day. Both of you be safe on the roads, whatever you are doing, whether you're in a car or a bike. Thank you both very much indeed. Your views very welcome. You know what to do. Get in touch. Freedom of cyclists, or you want more freedom as a driver or a pedestrian? Are we any closer to sharing the roads?
We'll get the views after the break as we go through the papers of David Wooding and also of Nikki Hodgson as we give you other stories making the headlines today.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Right, with the time at 22 minutes before 9 o'clock now, we're going to go through the newspapers. And we've been doing that all morning in the company of political journalist David Wooding and author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson. David, you want to begin with the energy crisis. This is the Telegraph here. And this is a combination of working from home and how actually, when there were all these benefits of saving on your commute and whatever, actually turning on the lights and powering up your house could cost a lot.
Yes, this will probably be enough of a shock to force those WFH employees back into their offices, because according to this Bloomberg study, which is in the Daily Telegraph this morning, in January it will add an extra £683 monthly on the bill, it'll make the monthly bill £683. It would currently be about £492 if you were going into the office. So it's a saving of nearly £200 by going into the office. This is all taken up, of course, not only with your heating, but making your cup of tea, having the TV on, firing up your computer, all those little costs. So perhaps people will be thinking about going back. The only problem is they'll have to pay some commuting if you're in London. The cost of that, though, still won't outweigh the savings you'll make on staying from home.
Well, and your fuel, if you're driving to work, if you don't live in the capital or a city with public transport in that way. Or maybe you could cycle if you were listening to our last conversation. That's probably the cheapest way to get about it. Do you think people are really looking at their workplace, their gym potentially? We've had a few people message in to say, actually, my gym, if I shower there and do all of my kind of washing, that probably saves me more money. Do you think people are looking at where they can supply energy elsewhere?
Absolutely, Rosie. I was just looking at this here. You know, somebody in London using public transport probably spend about £175 a year if they're commuting from just outside. So if you walk or cycle in, you'll save that. You keep yourself healthy. Again, same with the gym. Use the showers there. In fact, go and have your lunch there as well. Take a packed lunch and you'll keep warm for an extra hour. I don't know. People will be thinking about things like this more.
People will be very, very inventive about all of that. I know, like people saying, really, but then just listening to what you're saying, it makes sense, and those who can probably will.
Yes, sure.
Cut corners like that. Nikki, university places and the cost of those from the Times.
Yeah, so obviously we've been talking about A-level results today and the fact that there are going to be fewer places for people to go around even if they do get their grades. But this is actually a survey that's saying that almost half of sixth formers are considering starting their own business rather than going to university. And it's found that 45% of 16 to 19-year-olds are thinking of becoming entrepreneurs, with many deterred because of the cost of going to university. About 75% think it's too expensive. And obviously, you know, it's something that lots of us have borne out. I'm still paying my student loan off and I'm very old now. Yes.
The truth.
I'm telling the truth.
What, so you're what?
I've still got
58 years of age.
I'm 58 years of age. I'm only waiting 2 years and it'll be written off. No, I'm going to be paying it. I'm nearly 40. I'm 40 next year and I'm still paying it.
Were you a mature student?
No, I just didn't earn enough money, Eamonn.
Right, well, that is, and that's hanging over your head. So.
Yeah, it's really annoying. It's like 300 quid a month, which would be nice to put into a savings pot or something, or save for a pension, but still paying the loan off.
Yeah, well that's the truth, that's the reality.
Yeah, if you want to see, kids, what's happening, you'll be in my position in X amount of years' time.
Well, it is absolutely true. Somehow people think this will magically disappear.
It doesn't. If the more you earn, the more it increases. That's the thing. Just when you think, I'm all right now, I've started to kind of like get on with it, then they hit you with more. But, you know, I'm here, so, you know.
Thank God I was stupid. It just doesn't affect me in the slightest.
Well, so this is just saying that lots of younger people who haven't quite done their A-levels yet are thinking, well, is there any point going to uni? I mean, I've got to say the survey was commissioned by the web hosting company GoDaddy, who are all about entrepreneurial growth. So it might be slightly biased. It was only a small pool of respondents. But there's also been a separate study done at the University of Kent that found that during lockdown there were far more entrepreneurs that kind of came into the world as a result of losing their jobs. So.
And it's really called GoDaddy, that way.
GoDaddy.
That sounds...
I don't know why they called it
wrong,
that. But you can't forget it once you've heard it.
That's true. One thing students might want to save on would be drinking. We were talking yesterday, actually, about how the younger generation are turning really more to sort of alcohol-free drinks. But if we look in the FT, Japan, apparently, David, urging younger generation to drink more.
Yes, this is against the trend at the moment. While in the UK and other Western countries, we're trying to persuade us to drink less and be more reasonable and responsible about our drinking. In Japan, the government has launched a campaign to get the younger generation to drink more. Why? That's because the industry there, the drinks industry, has been on the long-term slide, and as a result, they're drinking something like, overall, about 8 litres a year of alcohol per person. Now, to give you a comparison, it's nearer 12, 11 and a half, I think, or more in the UK. So they've launched this campaign called Sake Viva, in which they're asking people to get out and drink more and enjoy and give the industry a boost. I think the overall amount of the growth and income from industry for the drinks industry is only 3%, then it's fallen down to 2%, and they think there could be no drinks industry left. So it's just interesting against the trend. They're bucking the trend.
It's very unusual to get advice to say drink more, because we know university, if we talk about health, the answer is sort of drink nothing at all.
It is really, but that's exactly what's happening in Japan. They're drinking nothing at all, and now they're trying to get somebody to just go out and have the odd drink. And
so they've got better livers, but the industry may be struggling, clearly.
There's a cost to everything we do, I guess.
Right, so we go to... you're not really talking about Christmas, are you?
Well, you'll know, Eamonn, that in journalism, we deal with Christmas in September, don't we, normally?
Yes,
especially if you work in magazines, which is what I've always worked in.
Yes.
So, OK, it's a few weeks early because we're in August, but actually this is to do with Mariah Carey trying to trademark the phrase Queen of Christmas.
I could
because she thinks
trademark
she
a
is.
phrase against Mariah Carey.
I think we all could.
I've interviewed her a number of times, and really it is... well, there's always a story to tell as a
Yes,
result.
yes. Well, there are two other singers that have come forward and said, you can't have it because I've done more than you at Christmas. One of them is Elizabeth Chan, who's an American singer who's produced 9 Christmas albums, and she's filed a formal objection to the trademark claim, basically saying nobody should own Christmas. Christmas is about sharing. Well, obviously, you know, kind of the antithesis of what Mariah's thinking. And then there's also Darlene Love, who's now 81, and she first rose to fame with her song Christmas, Baby Please Come Home, which Michael Bublé has covered. And she said, at 81 years of age, I'm not changing anything. I've been in the business for 52 years, have earned it and can still hit those notes. And if Mariah's got a problem, call David or my lawyer.
So this lady calls herself, she's trademarked the title.
Well, apparently David Letterman called her the Queen of Christmas back back in the day. So the phrase has kind of entered it's entered the zeitgeist anyway. And so she's saying, no, sorry, Mariah, I've already got there first.
So I said no sorry to Mariah once. I have a number of stories, but this is just one of the stories. So I turn up to interview Mariah Carey, and she's 4 hours late, right? Now, I wasn't for hanging around, but anyway, I hung around. And when she got there and she came into the room, she lay down on a chaise longue, right? So I said...
Where were you, like in a hotel or something?
Yeah. Okay. So I said, what's this all about? And her person said, Miss Carey's very tired, so she's going to do this interview lying down. And I said, well, that's fine, I'll lie down with her. And I literally got over and lay down beside her, and they went wild. Everybody went wild. What are you doing? What are you doing? I said, well, if she's lying down, I'm lying down. They said, but Miss Carey's very, very tired. And I said, and I can't tell you exactly the words I used, but I said, she's something very tired. I've been up from 3 o'clock this morning. I've done breakfast television. She's 4 hours something late. And I said, so don't tell me she's tired. She's not as tired as I am. So they said, well, you cannot do this interview with Miss Carey lying down. I said, well, either she sits up or we both lie down. And they said, well, she'll be lying down. I said, well, I'm going home. Bye. And I just went home. And that was it.
How did that go down with
I don't really care.
the bosses?
I don't...
He's still here today, isn't he? He's all right.
Well, you had a good story to tell the next day, didn't you?
Had a very good... And for the next 30-odd years.
He's been dining out on it.
I've got a number of them. But why on earth would you degrade yourself by allowing the so-called pretend Queen of Christmas... when people say, oh, she sold more records than the Beatles and Elvis and whatever combined.
Which means nothing, really.
Well, what the heck? She's famous for one song.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Have you met her since?
Yeah.
And did that come up?
No, she wouldn't remember me in the slightest.
Maybe she lies down for all of her
that was another argument. No, that was another. She is appallingly behaved, appallingly. But then people kiss her backside. But, I'm not one of them. So, there we go. Right, where are we next?
With Daily Mail.
I'm bringing my camp bed in next week.
Jacob Rees-Mogg on the old desk.
What gets me is 99.9% of interviewers would have interviewed her while she lay down from her tiredness. I thought, so disrespectful. But anyway, there we go.
It feels very strange.
Are you going to move into that, David?
If you wanted to foster a very positive relationship with your dog, you can't buy loyalty with treats. Why not?
Well, that's...
I don't believe this. I want to say right from the start. I don't believe this. My dog is stuck to my leg, right? Comes around because she knows I am the only one that gives her sneaky treats.
Is your dog allowed to lie down while you talk to her?
Definitely. My dog can do anything.
On a chaise longue?
She can do anything.
Well, this study shows that if you give your dog a treat, so if the husband gives the dog the treat, the wife doesn't, the dog doesn't automatically go to the one who does. Because they did a study in which they had 6 or 7 dogs sitting there watching one dog, which went to a couple, and one was giving the treats and the other wasn't. So feeding scraps on the side of the table. When they let the other dogs in, they didn't necessarily go to the person who was giving the treats. And then they did a second run where the dogs had already been in to see who gives the treats. And again, they didn't necessarily go to the person who hands out the treats. So you don't get anything back for the dogs from feeding them.
I don't believe this either. I've got a little sausage dog, and I'm the sneaky treater in my house as well, and he knows it and comes to me first, always.
Do you want to have the relationship based on the fact that you just give sneaky treats?
Yeah, because they still love you
I'd
for
love
it.
to marry someone who had a relationship based on giving them treats and they were going to be really nice to me as a result.
It'd be so simple, wouldn't it?
Well, if I
An easy
ever
way.
end up with some dolly bird, you know, who's like 40 years younger than me or whatever it is, and people say she's only after you for your money, that's fine.
That's fine.
That's fine.
It's all clear.
It's all okay. It's fine. But there you go. So it's interesting scientific research, and because it's from Vienna or whatever, I'm looking, I'm thinking this could be very, very important. But I don't believe it, David. It's just not in practice. Maggie loves me.
But David, the other thing it said is that wolves wolves are different. Wolves do discriminate. And so wolves do prefer the person that gives them the most treats, but dogs
they
don't.
Would eat you otherwise.
Well, obviously.
That's the whole thing. They would eat you. Well, that's very, very good. Guys, thank you for raising all of that. We've covered some nice stuff there. David Wooding and Nikki Hodgson, thank you both very much indeed all morning. Let's bring you up to date news-wise. Here's what's happening.
A 44-year-old man has been arrested this morning on suspicion of murder following the fatal stabbing of Thomas O'Halloran in West London. It's the 87-year-old man who was stabbed to death whilst riding his mobility scooter in Greenford. Police described the attack as a shocking act of unprovoked violence.
The government's been accused of being asleep at the wheel over the energy crisis as an Ofgem director quits over price caps. Christine Farnish told The Times she had resigned because she couldn't support a decision to recover supplier costs by raising customer prices.
The man accused of stabbing Sir Salman Rushdie on stage at an event in New York says he's surprised to hear he's alive. 24-year-old Hayley Mattar told the New York Post the author attacked Islam, but didn't say whether his alleged actions were driven by a fatwa that was issued in Iran in the 1980s. Mattar has pleaded not guilty. He's due to appear in court again on Friday.
OK, A-levels, that's what we're talking about today, and a lot of people think it's the end of their world if they don't get the right sort of result today. So that's affecting pupils in Scotland, in England and in Wales today. Well, joining us now in the studio is a man called Simon Squibb, a young man called Simon Squibb, and he didn't do well at school. How badly did you do at your A-levels, my friend?
I didn't even take them.
Didn't even take them?
I had to leave school at 15 years old.
When you say had to?
My mother kicked me out of home, and I had no choice but to leave school because I needed to earn money and survive.
Well, we had a teacher in today, and I've forgotten what her phrase was, but she said, out of disappointment comes opportunity, or something like that. She said something like that. And Simon, out of that disappointment or that situation he was in, this is sort of a tale that we want to tell you. It may not apply to you, but just keep the moral of the story in mind, because out of his disappointment, opportunity did it not?
It did, yeah. And it's an important day today for people. I know those that got good results will be celebrating, and those that got bad results will be potentially sad. And a lot of people take it very seriously, getting a bad result in an exam. I am so grateful I didn't get A-levels. I'm so grateful I didn't go to university.
And that's a big statement. How?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because, and I know this might be controversial, but I feel like sometimes people do these things because society puts pressure on them to do so. I don't think for a large proportion of people university is required.
OK, and they can think outside the box and they can be more individualistic and whatever. We should point out to you now, as a result and through his life, Simon is rich. Simon's very, very rich, it has to be said. And what I want to sort of say is, are you lucky? We all have a certain amount of luck in our lives, or is the plan or the map that unfolded for you, is it something that could be replicated by other people?
I am nothing special. It can be replicated by other people easily. And you mentioned luck there, that's so true. But luck is something you can hack. And luck is three things. First of all, you need to take more risk. And sometimes by getting a bad exam result, C students end up hiring A students. Majority of A students end up working for C students. The people that got a bad result today will learn something resilience, something very important to get lucky. You need to take more risk, you need to be resilient, you need to know your destination. If you follow that criteria, you will get more luck. And getting a bad exam result today is good news, believe it or not.
Depending on who you are and how you rebound from the disappointment.
Exactly.
Now, you're looking at a C-grade student, and beside me here, an A-star
I never
student.
revealed my grades to you.
Well, you did.
I just said I worked really
no,
hard.
you told me yesterday you wasn't so good in the mocks or the ASs, but when it came to the real McCoy, you were fine.
Well,
more than fine. However, we're pointing this because I know you put the graft in.
Yes.
Right? You put the graft in. What would you say to Simon and the message that he's preaching here?
Well, I think what we want to understand is what happened to you. So you're then 15, you don't have a national insurance card, so even just getting a job becomes really difficult.
Yep.
You decided to go out on your own instead.
Yep. Well, that's the interesting thing. You know, the Vikings call it burning the boats, where you have no choice but to make what you have in front of you work. And so at the time, of course, it was bad luck. But in reality, I found myself in a position of good luck because I went basically into the streets. I was homeless for a while. And then I thought, how can I get out of this situation? And one of the things that happened to me was the entrepreneurial muscle woke up in my brain for the first time in my life. School had never taught me to.
Because it had to.
It had to. Survival. And it was brilliant. I feel awake because of it today. I have a great life today because of this moment where the option of going to university was no longer possible for me. And I started a business. I saw someone's big house. They had a messy garden. And something clicked in me and I thought, maybe I can take care of that garden for them. And I knocked on their door and said, your garden's messy. Can I take care of it for you? And they said, sure. And at that moment, I realised you can take an idea from your head and make it real. None of this was ever taught to me at school. And that's why today I'm on a mission to try and help people realise that you can become an entrepreneur. Anyone can. No one's born anything. Not a doctor, not a lawyer, not a journalist. You don't need a journalist degree to become a journalist, right? I don't know how it's got this way. I don't know how society's got this way. You think you need this bit of paper to go and do what you love. Just go do what you love.
Do you know, when I was young, when I was a teenager, I used to lie in bed awake at night, not over school. I enjoyed school immensely. I went to a grammar school and, everything was good. I was very working class. There was no one in my family had gone to grammar school before that. But I used to lie awake worrying about what am I going to be? What am I going to work at? How am I going to make money? And I don't know, Rosie, if that was foremost in your mind or not. I suspect it wasn't. But it always was for me. And the first thing I did was find pop bottles, lemonade bottles and Coca-Cola bottles because there was a 10p deposit on each one of them.
I'm showing my age now because I remember that too.
That?
Yes, of course.
And go round neighbours' houses and things. Will I dispose of your bottles for you? Will I do this? Will I get that? And there was things that you would think about making money. Cleaning cars, doing gardening for people that you had that entrepreneurial spirit. But I always remember that when I was offered the job as a journalist at 19, I took the job as a journalist because I thought a job in the hand is worth 2 degrees in the bush. And as a result, I was 4 years or 5 years ahead of everybody else in my field through experience. But that is a way of thinking. That is a way of thinking. I don't think you would have thought like that.
I just always was in a system, which was primary school, then secondary school, of just absolutely prioritising working hard regardless of what you did. And then probably I never was in the situation where I thought outside of the box so much because I was really focused. As soon as you start secondary school, year 7, it was like, what are those A-levels going to be? Work really, really hard. And one thing I think we would definitely be in common is you had that incredible entrepreneurial spirit born out of necessity, but you still had to work really hard.
Totally. I think the school system is broken. Let's be honest about it. I know it's a controversial point, but I think people shouldn't be under that pressure. I think in school we shouldn't be asking people, what are you going to do when you grow up? We should be asking people, what problem are you going to solve? I mean, you've solved problems doing what you've done. You've explained today's problem for people out there listening that have got bad results and try to help people with it. You're helping solve a problem. And I think that's the question we should be asking, not what are you going to do? And then put people on a treadmill to get exams, go to university, get into debt, come out and have to get a job, force them into the workforce as opposed to people doing what they want to do.
Well, Simon, stay with us because we've got the Education Secretary coming up on the programme in a few minutes' time, so it'd be good for
And I thought the most amazing thing you say was grade C people often hire A-star people. It's state of mind. And there's no right or wrong to all of this. It's another way of looking at it. And Simon, thank you very much indeed for your encouraging words. What I'd like to do now is go live. Where are we going? Is it Euston Station we're going to?
Pretty sure.
Yeah, we're going to Euston. So there we're going. And RMT union leader Mick Lynch, he's the man at the centre of attention today. Mick, we say good morning to you. It's a big day and the start of 3 big days for you once again.
Yeah, good morning. So we're out on strike again today on the National Railway and again on Saturday, and we've got our London Underground members on strike tomorrow. in pursuit of our claims for a settlement of the issues about jobs, job security, about working conditions, pay and pensions. We've been negotiating with the companies, but we haven't got a deal yet, so our members are heeding the call today, and we'll pursue our campaign until we get a settlement to these problems.
Now, Mick, I notice you say there you haven't got a deal yet. The thing most people will want to know is, do you feel, or are we any closer to a resolution?
I believe we can get a deal readily. I've been speaking to the companies, and my officers have been speaking to the companies throughout this. I think what the problem is now, we've been caught up in this Tory party leadership campaign, and the Department for Transport, Grant Shapps, is making a lot of macho and aggressive noises about unions, about railway workers, about me personally, and all sorts of stuff, which is very unhelpful. He's threatened at the weekend to make all our people redundant, issuing Section 188 forms, getting rid of all the guards on the trains. They want to close all the booking offices in the country so that people can't buy their tickets and get assistance. So there's all sorts of problems, and the rhetoric is going up. What I think Grant Shapps needs to do is calm down and allow the railway executives, the managers of these companies, to reach a deal with us in collective negotiations, which I think we could do if we got a change in the weather and a change in the mood from the government and from the minister leading this dispute. We could get a deal really quickly and get the railways back to a full service.
I have to say, that sounds quite conciliatory from your point of view. Meanwhile, the minister that you're talking about, Grant Shapps, he's in the Daily Mail today, and he's got a 16-point plan how to smash, they say, the rail strikers. So, you know, if Grant Shapps is watching today, he says, oh, look, this has nothing to do with me, this has nothing to do with us, nothing to do with the government, it's to do with the unions and the rail companies, but obviously sticking his nose in at every opportunity. What would you say to him directly?
I'd say to him directly, you're the single shareholder of Network Rail, and your contracts with the train operators mean he's responsible for industrial relations and the offers he puts to us. So he can either come to the table and facilitate a deal, or he can remain at a distance and allow those managers to get a sensible deal. He's put £4 billion worth of cuts on the railways, which is the source of these problems. He's hobbling London Transport at the minute through the cuts. We need a bit of sensible approach, a bit of conciliation from the other side of the table. I'm a person of goodwill. You can ask all the chief executives of the railway companies that I'm somebody that's willing to do a deal. We're ready and willing to get that on. And if he wants to create a mood where we can get a deal, let's do so and get the public back travelling and get the railways back to normal.
Can I give you the view of some of the public who've been messaging us this morning? And this same phrase keeps coming up, and it's come up from Jacqueline, for example, and from Christine. They say the rail unions are holding the country to ransom. For the people who hold that view, just explain to them why you think that isn't the case.
Well, we're not holding the ransom. We're making no demands on the public. We're making demands on our employers. What the employers have said to us is that we want to make thousands of your people redundant. They won't even give us a number, but we believe it to be in excess of 5,000 of our members to be put out of work. They want to create changes to our contracts of employment, which is a version of fire and rehire, because there'll be worse contracts than they've got now. We haven't had a pay rise for 2 or 3 years in many cases, and they want to attack our pension schemes. It's our job as a railway trade union to defend railway workers' rights. I think most people understand that. But we get many messages from the public, from the travelling public, fellow workers, people on our picket line here at Euston, who are saying we're really in tune with you because we're being treated the same way, or we've been robbed of all those conditions. The British working people are not getting a square deal off their employers. That's all we're asking for. And we'll support other workers. People say, oh, why don't the nurses get what you're getting? Why don't the teachers get what you're getting? They'll all be coming into this debate in the next few months. Many of those workers will be balloted by their trade unions because they're sick and tired of rich people, old Etonians, telling us that we've got to pull in our purse strings and just put up with a cost of living crisis and job insecurity, and we're not prepared to do that. We want dignity and a bit of respect off the employers and off this government. They've got to change their tune and get in tune with what working people need in this country.
Well, Mick, how do they get in tune with what working people need? Are you hinting to me, and you're talking about NHS workers, you're talking about the amount of support and people going past and honking horns in support of you guys. Next night it's going to be the postal workers as well. Are you hinting at joining together? Are you hinting at the best way to achieve this for anybody and everybody is a general strike?
Well, I don't know if there'll be a general strike, Eamonn. I can't call a general strike. I'm a railway union leader. That's up to the TUC. I don't think there will be a general strike in the traditional form. What I do think you're going to get is a summer of solidarity where there'll be waves of people joining into ballots, joining into action. I think it's 150,000 postal workers next week, British Telecom. We've seen disputes in aviation where settlements have been made, which is a good thing. What workers want is a settlement to justified claims for wages, job security and decent conditions. When they can't get that off people like the Royal Mail, who've made billions in profits over recent times since privatisation, with chief executives paying themselves up to £5 million a year on the back of the hard work of ordinary men and women up and down the country, that's not fair. We need a redistribution of wealth and a redistribution of power. Many people are just simply too low paid to get by in this economy. So we want a square deal, and corporate Britain's got to come to terms with that. They're paying out massive dividends. They're making very handsome profits. The stock market's still up 7,500, but inflation is rampant. We've got full employment and falling wages, which is a really peculiar situation. So we've got to address that, and all workers, whether they're in a union or not, will benefit if we can make these breakthroughs for these groups of workers that are now in struggle.
Mick, that's where we're at. Where are we going to use a train term, are you any further down the line, further down the track to edging closer to a resolution? I mean, do you feel more positive or not?
I have to be positive, Eamonn. That's part of my job. I go into talks with them. We'll be back in on Monday talking to the companies. We are fully aware of what the problems are. We're fully aware of how we create solutions. But we need a change of attitude from the people that hold the key to this dispute, which is sitting in the Department for Transport and in the Treasury. We've got a crisis on London Transport where they've been forced to go bust by the government. They are holding Sadiq Khan, the mayor, to ransom by saying you won't get the money unless you make savage cuts to pensions and savage cuts to railway conditions. The same is happening on the railway. We can work up a solution if the people with power in this country allow that solution to come to fruition, and that's what I'll be working on with those transport executives in the next couple of weeks.
And I hope you see something in common and we can get this all sorted. Mick Lynch is the RMT union leader. Thanks for your time. Thanks very much, Mick. Right, with that, we're going to talk about the A-level results.
Yeah, students are receiving their results today. So for the first time, this is the set of grades we're looking at when the students sat in an exam hall and did an in-person exam. We can find out more and speak to the Secretary of State for Education, James Cleverly, who joins us on the line. A very good morning to you. There's quite a lot of disappointment, isn't there, this morning from those people who didn't get the grades, fewer than last year, missed them.
Well, firstly, I want to say a massive thank you to the teaching profession who have meant that those in-person exams can happen for the first time in years, and a huge thank you and congratulations to the students themselves who have gone through a really turbulent couple of years and are now getting those grades through. And actually there is lots of good news. There are more students taking up their first place or reserve place offers than we saw in 2019, which was the last year when we had full exam results. We're seeing the plan that we had collectively put in place, which is to get those grades back to the pre-pandemic norms. That's happening. And what I would say, and I know it's a really tough time of year, I've got teenage boys myself, the oldest of whom has gone through this, is that if for whatever reason you didn't quite get the grades that you were expecting, and that happens every year, remember, that happens every year, to get on the phone, get in contact with your school, get in contact with your university of preference, because you may well still be able to get on that course. And if that doesn't work, we have the clearing system, which is geared up to match students to courses and institutions. So it's always a bit of a turbulent day, but things are largely playing out as we expected.
There are fewer clearing places available this year.
Well, I think a part of that is the fact that a larger proportion of young people have got their first place or reserve place offer. So there's actually more people going through the main process at the moment, and that's great news. But the clearing process is there. It's a dynamic system, so courses will be coming on through the day, and obviously students will be able to make applications and get offers through the day and the forthcoming days. So, as I say, the plan that we had in place with UCAS, with Ofqual, with the universities and the schools is playing out very much as we had anticipated and hoped.
Some people have been scratching their heads this morning about a story that we've covered in our newspaper review, that there is a cap on the number of people who can go and do a medicine degree. So some people who got the grades they needed, they may get all A stars, won't then get that place. And when we're looking at what's helping in the health system, is it time to lift that cap so that we can get as many people who are bright, intelligent, capable, training up to be doctors?
Well, the reason that we have a cap on things like medicine and dentistry is because these are very, very, very expensive courses. They are incredibly good quality courses, and we want to have the most professional cohort of young people coming into the medical profession. But they are very, very expensive courses. In other countries where they don't put a cap on the overall number, the cost of that course is borne by the students themselves. So here in the UK, we keep that cost to the student low, but the trade-off is that we can't have as many numbers as there are in other parts of the world. But in other countries where they don't have a cap, as I say, the full cost, and that can run to hundreds of thousands of dollars, the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of pounds, that cost is borne by the student themselves. That's not the system we go with. And you've got to remember, we have more young people training to be doctors now than before. The numbers are going up. We're recruiting more medical professionals. But we recognise that in those incredibly competitive courses, not everybody can get on them. And of course, that's disappointing for the individuals involved. But that's the tough decision, the tough trade-off that we've decided to make.
Some students are absolutely balking at the cost of university. Is there now a moment to sort of engineer a real gear shift that is away from finishing school, going into university, and putting greater spotlight on apprenticeships?
Well, I'm really glad that you've brought that up. I would never want to discourage someone from going to university, but for us in the department and in the government, it's about making sure there is a wide range of really good quality options for young people. So I'm wearing this TL badge, that stands for T-levels, and they're a new qualification awarded for the first time this year, about 1,000 students, equivalent to 3 A-levels, technical, vocationally orientated, because we know that about half of students, actually over half of students, don't go on to university. They go on to apprenticeships of some sort or directly into the world of work. Those are really important and valuable life choices. We want to make sure that young people have credible options, both in the traditionally academic, but also in really good quality vocational training as well. I did a vocational degree. I'm very proud of that fact. And what we want to see is young people have a full range of top quality choices. That's what we continue working towards.
James, very quickly, I just want to introduce Simon Squibb, who's been in the studio with us, who left school age 15 and wants a different approach when it comes to education. Simon's just got a question for you.
Hi, James. I just wondered why the school system is still exactly the same as when I was at school at 15, and it doesn't teach people financial literacy, it doesn't teach people business. Why not give people a chance not just to get a job, but create one for themselves?
I just when I was being mic'd up, I heard some of your personal story, and it is inspirational and amazing. I would say actually that a lot of schools are actually getting much better at teaching those perhaps non-traditional life skills, entrepreneurialism, business skills. I think your personal example shows that some of those skills you can only really learn in the world of work itself. But you're a classic example of someone who has shown that you can make a huge success of your life in that kind of entrepreneurial business route, and that is fantastic to see. We want to have genuine options, whether it's education, I know that wasn't the right answer for you, but whether it's higher education or technical training or starting your own job, starting your own company, either as your main employment or as a side hustle. We want to see all those options available, and we're getting towards a situation where there's a wider range of options for young people, both at school and when they leave school as well.
James, I just want to ask you finally, I remember when I was 18, the most infuriating thing that adults would say to me was, oh, I don't even remember what I got in my A-levels anymore. They didn't define me. What were your grades like?
Yeah, I was waiting for that. I was waiting for that question. So before I answer, and I kind of will answer, one of the things I would say to students is actually once you get going in your course or in your job, you'll tend to find that people are less obsessed about your exam results than you might think at the moment. I'm not going to tell you my A-level results because they were awful. I'd been offered a place in the army. I massively took my foot off the pedal when it came to effort and work, and I didn't get a very good set of A-levels.
They're not a secret, are they? I mean, if you applied for a job and you were...
I've done all right.
So, just please, will you tell us?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, fine.
No, they were
Fair
awful.
enough.
That's as far as I'm willing to go.
Or final question, did you at least pass all the ones that you took, or did you fail some?
I matriculated, so I got my matriculation. That's as far as I'm going to go.
Why are you being so coy about this? OK, James Cleverly, thank you very much.
What James is really trying to say is that to get into government, no one ever asked him what he got in his A-levels, basically. So, you know, his personal skills obviously took over after all of that. Thanks, James. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. We'll leave it there. And look, we're gonna take... Oh, sorry, Simon, we should say bye to you. I mean, you've got everybody talking today, but it's your way. It's not for everybody, but... Do you think it's something you're born with, this inside you, this entrepreneurism?
No,
or no?
No one's born anything. Yeah. I think you can learn it. The business secretary, education secretary is wrong. You can teach these skills. Yes. They are totally teachable. Financial literacy is teachable.
Yeah.
Why are we pretending it's not? I don't understand. And I think that I'm not born anything. I had to become an entrepreneur, and actually it's a good thing. I think people can become whatever they want to become. Put your mind to it.
Yeah, we had a teacher on today who basically said the education framework is not fit for purpose now. We need to evolve, we need to have new things, personal relationship skills, business skills, all sorts of things that are going to be more relevant and pertinent to young people than some of the things they are being taught today. And obviously I can see that you would agree with that as well.
Totally.
Lovely hearing your story, Simon.
Thank you for having me on.
Not at all. Thank you very much indeed. Look, we're going to take a break there, and then the interview I don't really want to do, but I do want to do, is with Holly Dance. Holly Dance is Archie Battersby's mum, and the lad is dead now, 2 weeks or so. His life support was turned off. So this is her first TV interview, her first live TV interview, and she's going to do it here with us, GB News, right after this. I hope you can join us.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge. and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. 12-year-old Archie Battersby died on the 6th of August after being taken off life support after a protracted legal battle that we all know about. His mum, Holly, campaigned long and hard to keep her son on a ventilator since an accident at home on April the 7th. So we're going to talk about the accident, we're going to talk about the ending, we're going to talk about what's next for Holly Dance. We say good morning to her. Holly, I would love to say lovely to see you, but it's an interview I didn't want to do, but we're here, and I do want to meet you and see you after the announcement of Archie's passing. And you faced those cameras and you faced them with immense dignity.
Thank you.
But I suppose you had to. You had no alternative, had you?
No, definitely not. I was fighting, obviously, for Archie's life. Everything else comes second, doesn't it? Your child's your priority.
Could I ask you what it was like at the end? I mean, it must have been so awful for you because 1 minute the life support was going to be withdrawn, then it wasn't, then you had more time, then you had less time, then you had more time again. Then the time actually had to come where somebody, I don't know who, literally had to pull a plug or flick a switch.
It was very tense. The anxiety, obviously, it's literally like walking on eggshells. You know, it's. I think that last day we actually filed 3 applications in total.
How can you do all of that, yet at the same time be waiting for your son to leave life?
I think
you're busy, and then you have to stand and grieve and hold his hand, and then you have to run to a telephone again, or...
obviously, I was by Archie's bedside, so my phone's there. We did the call, the last case, via Zoom, so I was there with Archie. I don't think you can explain how it feels to anybody, really. It's something that only people, obviously, that are going through it at the time will know or understand exactly how it feels. It's your worst nightmare.
How are you now? How are you dealing in the 2 weeks that have passed?
Keeping busy. I think that is going to be my way of dealing with it, and fighting as hard as I can to get some sort of change in law so parents and people don't have to go through this. You know, we was backed into a corner by the system and stripped totally of our rights, and there's been another baby, his life support was withdrawn 2 days after Archie. There's another case that was in court yesterday. I believe the father collapsed again. It's the stress placed on us by the system. It's something that's got to change.
And the indignity of it, I mean, you want some sort of dignity.
Massive indignity.
Through this. So what happens from here on in? What are you looking to change? What can you change?
Well, that's obviously, we've written to the Health Secretary, so moving forward to see what we can change. I think the whole thing that you're rushed into court, that's got to change. That has to change. You know, I know.
But they'll want it to change as well. Do you feel that authority finds you and people like you an inconvenience?
Most definitely. Definitely. And I think the whole word best interest in court should be changed to best convenience, because it's got nothing to do with the best interest of the child involved. I don't believe it has. As they kept saying, Archie was brain dead, he had no feelings, therefore he had no best interests.
Well, you and I talked about this and you felt he had feelings and you could feel his hand.
Most definitely.
You could feel the suppleness of his hand and
Most
his arm.
definitely,
and
the warmth.
all those sort of things. Nothing I'm going to say, nothing you're going to say is going to bring that beautiful young lad back. And he was beautiful. I keep saying this every time I see him. Just a beautiful, angelic looking boy. But is this what's keeping you going?
Most definitely. I refuse to grieve for Archie's life. I am so honoured and feel his whole life was an absolute pleasure. I'm so honoured to have been Archie's mum, so I refuse to grieve. I'm more celebrating Archie's life. It was the best 12 years of my life.
Well, could we talk about what led to this situation? And if you go back to April, and often I find people aren't talking about this. Do you mind talking to me about what he did, or what you think that he did that put him in this situation?
Okay, so what we believe that Archie's done is possibly copy an online challenge, and these online challenges are serious. I've stated quite a few times, they're grooming our children. You know, these are adults that children look up to. Children don't look at adults and think for 1 minute they're going to put us in danger. I have obviously started researching and absolutely horrified to watch grown men putting things around their neck, showing these children.
Showing children what to do, and you feel that Archie copied this, entered into this challenge?
Yes, I do.
And will there be any progression on this front? Will there be any opportunity to track down someone who was at the other end of this, or prosecute them, or bring them to justice?
I haven't really thought about the prosecution side. I think it's a hard thing because a lot of people obviously blame the parents, you know, you should be monitoring your children, it's a blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, we cannot watch our children 24/7. Archie's 12 years old. I'm pretty much behind Archie, was behind Archie 24/7, you know. There are times when they do require their own privacy or they want their own time out. And again, you can't always target the apps that are obviously doing these. Maybe a bit more needs to be done with regards to prosecuting the people who are actually demonstrating the videos, you know, because they're obviously the children are copying.
There's two things I want to ask you or say to you before we say goodbye. And one is, what would you say to the parents of young impressionable children who spend a lot of their time online? What would you say to those parents who would say, oh, he or she, they're up there on that computer, I don't know what they're doing? Just
have the talk with them. I think have the talk and make it very clear, you know, that there are dangers. You know, I was forever telling Archie, you know, because he used to hide in pillowcases and things, and that used to give me anxiety. Don't put things over your head, don't put things around your neck, you know, is just keep reinforcing the dangers and what could happen. Use Archie in the conversation, you know, this is what happened to this little boy, because he thought 1 minute he was mucking around, he had his whole life ahead of him, and look what's happened, you know, and look how sad his family are, because he's chose to copy something that has left him in this situation.
We all know him because we know him through pictures on television and hearing reports on radio and things about him, and we know him through you. But we don't know him. We don't know him at all. Could you finally leave us with who Archie was, who he is, and how he'll live on with you?
Oh, he will forever live on, Archie. He's an absolute legend. He wanted to be a champion, and I believe he's gone out a champion.
Champion what?
He's just a champion. He's my little champion, and I think he's left an impact on everybody, and hopefully prevent a lot of people or a lot of children copying the same thing. He's brilliant. I love him to bits. He's brilliant.
And you're going to be his champion forever.
Thank you.
So sorry.
Thank you.
Holly Dance, Archie Battersby's mum.
Thank you for joining us this morning on Breakfast on GB News. Lots of difficult, heart-wrenching, difficult stories this morning. We'll be back tomorrow from 6 o'clock, but do stay with us here on the channel. Tom Harwood will be here with the briefing.
Thanks for watching.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Following the intense thunderstorms that some southern counties saw yesterday, today it's fine in the south, but it is already turning cloudier further north and west, with some outbreaks of rain moving in, this time coming from the Atlantic. The rain not quite as impactful as the intense thunderstorms that have been very hit and miss over the last few days, but nevertheless it's a damp start to the day for western and central Scotland and Northern Ireland. The rain then by late morning pushing into parts of Cumbria, North and West Wales, eventually turning up into the tip of Cornwall. And those outbreaks of rain will be on and off. They'll be light to moderate, but some heavier stuff coming along for North Wales and North West England later. It's replaced by showers for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Cool here with a breeze, 18 to 20 Celsius, but 27 Celsius in the south.